25 years old, and I still wake up with a little guy saluting me.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy.
Wake up!
Wake up, will you, pal?
They need a wake-up call.
Someday this country's gonna wake up.
Wake up and smell the coffee.
Hey, welcome in on this Wednesday. It's a hump day here on the Fan Wake Up Call, and thank you so much for waking up with us. He's Kevin Bowen. I'm Andy Sweeney. Mark Dykton producing today's effort. You know, it's a Wednesday. We'll give you an update on the Jonathan Taylor situation. A little Jim Bob Cooter sound maybe later on JT. We can dive into that. I think we switch, basically for me to the Tennessee Titans as we get ready for Sunday there and Lucas Oil. We have Indiana, Mike Woodson bending the knee, Scott Dolson bending the knee to John Calipari. We can get into that, and otherwise it's a busy show. Stephen Holder, ESPN, will join us coming up at 8 o'clock, his normal Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Dustin Dopirak, we'll talk with him at about 8:30, and then NFL Network and former NFL exec Marc Ross will join us in the 9 o'clock hour. What do you do with JT? What about Shaq Leonard? What about the first 4 weeks of the NFL season? Busy on this Wednesday, and we appreciate you hanging out with us on The Fan. KB, a very happy morning to you, sir.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man.
I feel like we should note that
Hey.
on one try, Andy got Dustin's last name correct.
Dustin Dopirak?
Jake, Jake couldn't get it to save his life.
Jake struggled with that name, and he's
got
courtside seats to the Pacers. You think he know one of the beat writers? What's going on with that?
A lot of syllables being thrown in there. Dustin Dopirak.
I had to write the phonetics on the board a couple times. It's still screwed.
Well, there
up.
are words
hooked on phonics. So
there are words that I butchered a word a day or two ago. I can't even remember what it was. I used to not be able to say Philadelphia, and that obviously they have a bunch of teams that I hate. So you got to be able to say the teams in the city that you hate. Mark, I've had Dustin on since he covered IU, even back in Bloomington, and then I had him on when he left. And remember, he covered the Tennessee Volunteers for a couple years down in Knoxville. So I have not spoken with him since I've been in Indy, and I cannot wait to do so. So we'll talk with him at 8:30.
Hey, speaking of Dustin, a lot of people were like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the Rick Carlisle interview yesterday."
That's
and
fantastic.
For those that missed that is up on the podcast. The Pacers had their first training camp practice yesterday. We'll touch on, I think, what was the expected starting lineup. But again, Dustin's going to join us coming up at 8:30. Certainly, as Andy pointed out, the big news, I would say, in this market yesterday, and it takes a lot to probably supersede the Colts when you're in the season, but it is Indiana, Kentucky restarting that rivalry. Again, it's been 14 years. Yes, they have met in the NCAA tournament, actually twice since the Christian Watford shot. But you got to go back to 2011 for the last time these two programs met. So basically, it's going to look like this. It's not happening this year. It's not happening next year. So we're out in the 2025 cycle, but they will meet in December starting in 2025 for 4 straight seasons. The order of those games, Andy, will be Rupp Arena, Lucas Oil, Rupp Arena again, and then Assembly Hall to round it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to do this right now?
I believe you just said that
you want to do this
bending
right
the
now?
knee.
I mean, it's not. Yes, they're 100% bending the knee. Now, the question I have is, do Indiana fans care? KB, let me tell you something. Sometimes when a player goes from one team to another and they're like, he knows all the signals that we're going to use. That came up last week. Remember, weren't the Dallas Cowboys like, we're worried about the Patriots because the Patriots signed Will Greer and they have Ezekiel Elliott, and they're going to know our plan. They're going to know our signals. They're going to know what we're doing pre-snap. And obviously that game was a blowout and it didn't matter at all. It's just funny to talk about. We talk about those things in sports. I covered Kentucky basketball for like 15 years. They are laughing at this. Make no mistake about it. John Calipari, and this goes back months, okay? This was finalized yesterday, but this was going to be the setup for months. Back when I was on the radio following Kentucky basketball, knowing people close to Calipari basically said, we're going to play Indiana, and they're going to do it the way I want to do it. And if you're an Indiana fan, you may want to play these games. I've seen a lot of KB, well, it's good to play these games. And by the way, cut in at any time and tell me to shut up, because to me, this is a big story that Scott Dolson and Mike Woodson said, we want to play these games so bad that we will give in to John Calipari, the Emperor, and the evil empire. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, Cal wants to play in Lucas Oil. He loves to play away from Rupp Arena. He does. So essentially, I know Indiana controls a lot of those tickets. Okay, big boy, let's see how much blue gets in, because that's what they do. Kentucky fans are arrogant towards Indiana. They look down on Indiana. They view them as, if Indiana were on the schedule this year, 5th or 6th down the line on their non-conference schedule. And listen, I'm happy the games are going to be played. I also am, if John Calipari is there on December 16th, 2028 to go back into Assembly Hall, then you might as well just say we won the lottery, because there's about as good of a chance as us winning the lottery as John Calipari still coaching in Lexington in 2028. Cal's a baby about Assembly Hall. He was a baby about the Watt shot, and that's just the way it's going to be. And so everyone's patting everybody on the head. They're finally playing, and these two powerhouses should play. KB, they should play. I would agree with that. But if you're going to play John Calipari, Indiana had to bend the knee. That's the way it's being viewed, whether you like it or not. It's great that they're playing, but Indiana fans just know that Scott Dolson bent the knee. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I think that's taking it to the extreme. I think in the world of college athletics, sometimes you have to make sacrifices to try and recreate, I guess, one of the great college basketball rivalries that unfortunately has not happened for the last decade plus. So, yeah, if you're an IU fan, do you look at it and say, man, I hate the Assembly Hall games, the 4th out of the 4 games on the schedule, and, 40,000 inside of Lucas Oil. I mean, I don't love that Lucas Oil end zone venue. That's what it'll be coming up.
Right. They cut it in half. They have the curtain. It almost looks like the old where San Antonio played, the Spurs, right? Where they bring the
Alamo
curtain down.
Dome?
Yeah, the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like, I think.
Not to get too into the academic calendar, I don't love that it's deeper into December than it was when I was on campus in Bloomington. They were playing those games a week earlier. These games are all going to be post-finals. So, what's your kind of student look at those games when they are on campus? Not a big fan of that. December 27th, does that just get lost in the Christmas shuffle a little bit? That's the date for the game.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Stadium.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I wonder if there's a reason just with the NFL if they're trying to be out of the way. I don't know. I don't know why it would be December 27th. I'm with you.
But I would say more than anything, and I don't know, maybe I don't live on BBN message boards and Peegs message boards, so maybe I don't care that much about it, but this is what college basketball should be about. If you are going to want kids to not go to Overtime Elite and G League Ignite and all of these different avenues that they can go to, you've got to have these rivalries a part of your basketball schedule, because these moments, I guarantee if you talk to Cody Zeller and Victor Oladipo, and maybe insert NBA jokes about their careers here, I guarantee you one of, if not the greatest basketball memory they have is what happened on December 10th, 2011. And I guarantee if you ask Anthony Davis, that would be a game that he probably remembers more so than even some of the NBA stuff that he has done as well. So, did IU bend the knee? Part of me is who cares? The fact that the rivalry is back on, to me, is the only thing that matters. Sure, would you have liked to have seen a second game at Assembly Hall? Yeah, but unfortunately, again, in college athletics in this day and age, you have to make some sacrifices with it. And I will credit Mike Woodson big time, because that first year when he took over, the non-conference schedule was a joke. And all of a sudden, it's let's get home and home with Kansas. Mm-hmm. Let's play Arizona on a neutral floor. You'll see Auburn, which I think is a pretty respectable program. You'll see them this year down at Atlanta. Obviously, you're going to have this series starting up here in a couple of years.
This is happening because of Mike Woodson as well. If this
his
were
relationship with Cal,
if this were Archie Miller, or if this were fill-in name of another coach, and I don't know who it would be, the chances of it happening. I guess, KB, here's my thing. I live this battle between Indiana, Kentucky, and Louisville fans, where there is, when you say you're not on the message boards, that's the life that I lived, okay? So the life that I have lived since this became official, Are BBN members making fun that Indiana bent the knee to John Calipari, and Calipari got his way? Now, I'm with you. The end result is a great end result for us. And ultimately, Indiana might be better. They might fill Lucas Oil, and it might be a fantastic atmosphere. In fact, it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. But in this battle of like who won and who lost,
I just don't care about what Big Blue Nation thinks.
But Indiana fans do. Indiana fans do, and Kentucky fans do. That's my point.
I mean, both those programs should probably look in the mirror and realize that in the last 5 to 10 years, they have failed to meet whatever standard
no doubt about that
has been created from previous eras. That should probably be the bigger issue than who bent the knee to get this relationship back started. Obviously, and I couldn't agree more to the point, will John Calipari even be the head coach of Kentucky?
2028?
I'm not trying to play the age game here, but could you have the same question for Mike Woodson? Won't Woodson be 70 when that game rolls around? I mean, we are so far in the future with all of this. I do think, and we brought this up very briefly yesterday, Andy, if you look at the news items from the Big Ten yesterday, obviously the Indiana-Kentucky rivalry getting back started was the biggest news item. You also saw the Big Ten release their schedule and the TV slots for where their games are going to be played here this coming season. And Purdue and Indiana are both in the boat because when you think about major college basketball fan bases, especially in the Big Ten, Indiana and Purdue are near or at the top. Indiana certainly is at the top. And I did not know this at the time, but I just kind of mentioned it in passing to you yesterday. One of those Indiana-Purdue games is going to be on Peacock. And sure enough, one of Peacock will be on Peacock coming up this year. And I went through the IU basketball schedule, and Purdue is in a very similar boat. I actually think Purdue has one more Peacock game than Indiana does coming up this year. If you want to watch Indiana's schedule, or every IU basketball game this year, 9 different channels. 9 different channels. You need two.
Can I list them?
2 streaming services.
So I mean, Big Ten Network.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Big Ten Network Plus.
Okay.
ESPN, ESPN2. Is there I'm guessing, is there an ESPN Plus in there? Can they do that contractually?
There is an ESPNU.
Oh, ESPNU. So
if
that
you
would
want
be
to go with that.
Yeah,
so there's 5.
That would be 5. Those Sunday CBS games.
Okay.
Right. So that's 6. Oh, my goodness. What would be... There's 3 more?
Well, who's the spearheader of all of this Big Ten realignment?
Well, it's Fox, so you're going to have a Fox. Now, does that go Fox and FS1?
FS1.
So that would put us at 7, or is that 8?
That's 8, and Mark, go ahead and play the noise.
Oh, boy.
There's your 9. So 9 different channels to watch Mike Woodson's boys this season. 2 of those will be on streaming services.
Shouldn't cause any confusion at all.
No confusion at all. And Purdue is in a very similar boat. I don't want to act like this is just an Indiana thing. Again, Purdue's got one more Peacock game, but we knew this would happen. Like Indiana's 5 Peacock games. At Michigan, at Rutgers, at Ohio State, Purdue, and Wisconsin. I would say those qualify as 5 games that Indiana fans would like to watch. Yeah. Indiana fans want to watch North Alabama.
Better get $6 a month.
Against the Hoosiers. So
$6 a month for the basketball season. Activated here November, December, January, February. There you go. Maybe March. You're going to have to spend $40 on it.
Get a free trial here and there.
Boy, you better hope that free trial extends into the spring months.
Oh, they want you to do the free trial because you auto pay it on Apple Pay and it takes $6 a month out of your account. Like
just
me.
do some multiple emails. That's
I think I bought Peacock. I think I did the free trial back when Notre Dame, I want to say Notre Dame Toledo might have been the first game.
I remember Notre
Peacock.
Dame. Oh, yeah.
And literally, I'm just like, wait, well, I kind of want to watch that IndyCar qualify. What?
They got you forever, KB. You will die whenever you die.
Here I am.
You will die with $6. By then it will be
freaking Peacock.
Yeah, by then it will be $66 with inflation. Listen, I don't want to be too hard. I'm giving the other side. I understand where you're coming from. I'm giving the other side where there's a bunch of internet terrorists on both sides of this rivalry, especially Kentucky fans who are saying, you stink so much that you gave in to John Calipari Calipari and BBN. But
this is why we need to play the games.
But listen, but I'm with you that I'm happy this is back. Calipari has been a baby about the damn watch shot, and that's all there was to it.
Fans counter and say, well, last time we met in the NCAA tournament, we beat you. Last time we met in the regular season, we beat you. Like,
absolutely.
This is why the games just frankly need to be played. And yes, bend the knee, Scott Olsen, Mike Woodson, however you want to describe it, I'm glad that these parties could get something on paper. I don't think it's the end of the world. That, again, it's 2 at Rupp, 1 at Lucas Oil, 1 at Assembly Hall. Part of me thought, can we get the Yum Center involved in this? Didn't we used to do Freedom Hall?
Well, you can't do that because Louisville has a stranglehold on the Yum Center, and Louisville is so hypersensitive about Kentucky being in their arena. Like when Kentucky and Louisville is played at Louisville, a ton of Kentucky fans are there and they're cheering in. Blue got in and they buy the tickets, and Louisville fans whine to other Louisville fans, why did you sell your tickets for hundreds of dollars on the spot to pay for the rest of your season ticket package in one damn game?
There's no nation.
College basketball, look at that on the day JT was supposed to practice.
No nation like Big Blue Nation. Yes, walk through today for the Colts. Again, Jonathan Taylor, the latest on that. We will chat about it. Anthony Richardson, I think a few other things that trickled out of Sunday's game that I want to touch on as well. We will have Stephen Holder join us coming up at 8 o'clock. I know he had a conversation with Chris Ballard post-game on Sunday. Some interesting thoughts from the Colts GM on that. Speaking of Colts GMs, you guys brought up Marc Ross at 9 o'clock. He was actually one of the finalists when the Colts hired Ryan Grigson back in 2012. So Marc Ross, former NFL scout and executive, he's going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. And we will look back on Pacers' opening day of training camp, what their starting lineup was, touch on a little bit of that with their preseason opener coming up Sunday against the Grizzlies. Good Wednesday morning to you. It is the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. I'm Kevin Bowen. He's Andy Sweeney. Mark Dykton with us as always. Thanks for tuning in here to 93.5, 107.5. The Fan.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, on this Wednesday, your morning checkdown, obviously, we talked a lot of Indiana and Kentucky in that first segment. 4 games upcoming beginning December 20th, 2025. The teams will play. So, however they got there, they got there. We'll continue to talk about that. The biggest news yesterday, Major League Baseball. Do you guys know how many postseason losses in a row it had been for the Minnesota Twins?
Boy, I did not know it until
It's
that
unbelievable.
was the big stat yesterday.
18,
right? Yeah.
18.
Since 04.
Yeah, and they finally broke the record. 3-1 winners there over the Blue Jays. Rangers over the Rays. That's one I gave you. Diamondbacks over the Brewers, 6-3. And Philly, crazy crowd there, 4-1 over the Marlins.
Yeah, Zach Wheeler pretty good there for Philly. So all 4 of those games again today, and any of the winners from yesterday, if they win today, they move on. It's just a best-of-3 series here in the wild card round.
You think Joel Erickson's sweating his Brewers right now?
I felt bad for
think he
Joel.
is.
I think Joel's a great dude, so I'm naturally going to feel bad when his fandom doesn't go his way. They're up 3-0 early on, and then all of a sudden, Diamondbacks got going, played a little add-on there in the end of that game. So 6-3 Diamondbacks over the Brewers there on the road in Game 1. All right, we mentioned it yesterday with Rick Carlisle, the opening of Pacers training camp. The early starting lineup look from yesterday was this. It was Tyrese Halliburton, of course, Miles Turner, of course. The other 3 spots occupied by Bruce Brown, Bennedict Mathurin, and Obi Toppin. So that meant Buddy Hield in the second unit, Jarris Walker, the top 10 pick from this past year, also in the second unit. Andy, I think that was kind of the expected starting lineup.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Just to see it actually on the floor, that was something, obviously, that's different.
Yeah, the big thing for me is Obi Toppin never got, and we talked about this, and we'll talk with Dustin about this at 8:30. Obi never got a chance with the Knicks for whatever reason, right? They took him.
Julius Randle's presence.
Julius Randle was a main reason, but there were games where this dude wasn't getting much run at all. And this is his chance. We talk about having a chance and taking hold of it. We talked about that with some of the young corners with the Colts. And to me, this is Obi Toppin's career. This is his career chance to play a lot and to be a starter. And I'm not surprised he was out there early on.
I remember back when this signing happened, if you look at Obi Toppin's starting numbers, again, didn't start a ton with the Knicks, but it is very impressive, the type of production and the shooting. He's a career 32% guy, so it's like, well, that's not great. But that's something that when he started, that number has skyrocketed percentage-wise. And a lot of the Pacers players have mentioned in their respective workouts and, the mini camp they did in Nashville over the weekend, they have been impressed by Obi Toppin as a shooter. So right now, that 4 position has been an issue for the Pacers in years past. It looks like the former top 10 pick out of Dayton is going to get the early crack at that. Again, Andy, today it'll be a walkthrough for the Colts, so I believe this is due to the back-to-back overtime games that they have had, / the injuries are starting to grow, but I am curious this, and we'll find out later today. Are there a couple of other injuries that we don't know about that have contributed to this news? Because when you look at it, where they're banged up right now is particularly O-line, D-line. Bernard Ryman probably wouldn't practice today. Quentin Nelson, we know, has done the early maintenance
with the toe
each week with the toe. Ryan Kelly's in concussion protocol. You flip over to the defensive line. Kwity Paye's in concussion protocol. I'd assume DeForest Buckner is probably going to be maintenance early in the week. But still, it's not like they're missing 13 dudes. So I'm curious, anybody else that maybe developed an injury coming out of Sunday that's contributing to this. We did see yesterday Dallas Flowers officially moved to injured reserve. No veteran cornerback move outside of they brought Darren Hall, a guy that was on the practice squad who'd started a few games with Atlanta the past couple of years, back onto the practice squad. So look for Jalen Jones and Darrell Baker Jr. to be competing for those reps. And Juju Brents, he's now an every snap guy. Every snap.
Again, a week and a half, we were wondering what the hell's going on with this guy. Well, in 3 weeks, if he's not playing, it's gonna be a big issue. He does what he did in the Baltimore game, the good and bad you saw last week, and now, hey, you're gonna be playing 90+% of the snaps out there on Sunday, big guy.
Welcome to the NFL. Welcome to the Colts cornerback position. Anything else on your end?
No, I'm just laughing. I went to ESPN.com, and when the Giants on Monday Night Football, Mark will love this. They did the tush push, what the Eagles have done in the
You got a couple guys hurt, right?
The Giants got two guys, a starting tight end, or a blocking tight end, and a starting offensive lineman got injured on that play.
Peyton said you got to push the right butt cheek specifically. They must not have done that.
Well, one on the left butt cheek, one on the right butt cheek, and one up the middle. I believe that's what Peyton Manning said.
That's a whole
It's a visual
situation.
It's a visual.
Yeah, he had a little comment there late, Peyton, that I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, FCA might not love
You can
that
say
one there.
you can say anything at 10 o'clock
Yeah,
at
that
night,
is a
can't
good
you?
point.
On cable television, you can say just about anything.
Couple of kind of nerdy notes from Anthony Richardson over the weekend that I wanted to get to, looking back on his performance. A lot of praise from Sean McVay, by the way. We could touch on that. I know we'll certainly get to a little bit on the Jonathan Taylor front. And should there be concern about Shaquille Leonard now 4 games into his return to the lineup? Stephen Holder coming up at 8. Dustin Dopirak, Talk Pacers at 8:30. Former NFL scout Marc Ross at 9 o'clock. Good Wednesday morning to you. It's a wake-up call with KB and Andy.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Yeah, thanks for waking up with us, hanging out. It's a wake-up call, drivehubler.com studios. He's Kevin Bowen. I'm Andy Sweeney. Take us wherever. Take us to work, 107.5thefan.com. Download the free app in the Google or Apple store. Plus, check out the podcast directly following the show. Busy show today. Stephen Holder will join us coming up in the next 30 minutes. KB, I have a question I want to get to at some point. It can be here. It can be down the line on Jonathan Taylor as we get ready to kind of see, at some point, Jonathan Taylor is going to have to flip his cards, right? Were you ever into poker, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Did Chris Moneymaker get you into
Phil
poker?
Ivy's
Texas
toys.
Hold'em at Cody's house.
Hell yeah. Kyle Klein had a big old 7th grade
did he
poker
really?
tournament that I was able to cash.
You boys need more bagel bites down there?
Was
Mom,
it Helmuth who did it
Phil
for you?
Hellmuth, I hated that dude.
Poker Brat didn't do it for you? Was it Chris Moneymaker?
I mean, Moneymaker for sure. But again, Phil Ivey, I don't know if I've ever seen the dude smile.
Phil Ivey. Phil Ivey said if
Phil Ivey, to steal a phrase from Shane Steichen, he's all poker.
Didn't he get in
he's
trouble?
All ball.
Did he get in trouble for something? I want to say
wore like the sunglasses.
Daniel Negron, that was Moneymaker
Kid
with the
poker.
sunglasses.
I just feel like you have to be a terrible poker player if your tell is like, I have to wear sunglasses so no one can see what I'm doing.
Boy,
Well, that's probably why you weren't a successful poker
Mark
player,
is crapping all over old Texas Hold'em players from 15, 20 years ago. Kid poker, Daniel Negreanu, I don't know. That's a Jonathan Taylor. At some point, we're all going to have to flip our cards over, and we're going to see what's up with Jonathan Taylor. I guess I'm just a little bit. Is it considered? Will it be considered practice today by the national media if he's out there with the team doing whatever you do in a walkthrough in the NFL? Will that count in any sort of way? Will that lead the NFL Network?
I guess, but again, it's a walkthrough. He's not going to show up in the injury report this week, so let's try to get ahead of some of these storylines that you're going to see here. And I think Shane Steichen made it pretty clear on Monday. We've got to see him with pads on. We've got to see him in a football practice. It's one thing to run around and do stuff versus air. It's another thing to actually, participate in a football activity that you have not participated in. We are nearing 10 months. And again, I think we need to reiterate, Andy, like Jonathan Taylor was very, very conservative maybe about his body last year in terms of how much he wanted to test it. I think he still played through some stuff, but I thought there were times throughout a week where he practiced on a Wednesday or Thursday. I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to play on Sunday. And then all of a sudden, I'm not going to play. And now you throw all the contract drama on top of it. And I'm curious just again, how willing, how eager he is to get back out there if he doesn't feel, again, and we can, debate how much the physical impact has been there. I think a couple things on Taylor. One, whenever he does make his return, and I know this isn't the juiciest NFL Network headline, but you know who needs a little bit of relief right now? Zach Moss.
Zach Moss, yeah. I mean,
Zach
there's no doubt about
Moss's
it.
NFL career is 4 years old now. And the last 3 games, Andy, are the 3 highest snap count games of his career. That is not sustainable for 17 games. So you just need to, if we want to talk in the short term, 2023, it's week 5, Colts are 2-2. How do they win the AFC South? Zach Moss can't be playing as much as he's playing for you to have him there in November and December in whatever capacity that you need. And also, I think at the end of this, Andy, it is a big-time positive, but I think there's the initial uncertainty with it. You watch the Colts offense, particularly their run game, it is a whole lot of timing involved. It's a lot of decision-making from Anthony Richardson with zone reads and things like that. That means you need to rep it. Mm-hmm. That means you need practice reps. And let's look back on Jonathan Taylor's collegiate career. He didn't have Anthony Richardson at Wisconsin. We know how Wisconsin's rushing offense looks. It doesn't look like how the Colts run it. And, I mean, the Colts, I think it's an extremely dynamic run game if you throw Taylor into the mix. I think Shane Steichen's creativity, plus the presence of Richardson, Moss spelling things, I think it has a lot of potential. But still, the timing of it, working with Richardson, all of those things, that's not something Taylor has done. And, certainly look at the quarterbacks he had in his first couple NFL seasons. They weren't doing that at all. So I think that's another element to this that it will be important for Taylor to get these practice reps. Officially, the practice reps starting tomorrow after a walkthrough today.
You are down, and I guess I'll try to pin you down on a percentage. You don't feel like Jonathan Taylor's playing this week. And I would agree with you. I think you're stronger than I am on this.
Maybe I'm thinking worst case scenario, Andy, but like the dude has missed, we added it up yesterday, I believe 53-ish straight practices. I cannot recall a time in the history of covering the NFL that I've ever seen a dude miss that much time, return after 2 practices, and play in the game. Now, the one reason why I'm like, okay, the door is not completely shut on it is because he plays a position where you could have 3 to 5 carries in a game, and that's all your running back role is. Plus, we just have this awkward health rehab football shape situation that we don't know. Like, what has he been doing behind the scenes? Again, to me, it still is a little bit different being in a practice, being in a game setting.
We have a 10-second video. We have a vine, basically, literally, of Jonathan Taylor.
Catching a ball out of the backfield, right? Not even running it necessarily.
Catching a ball out in the flat for 4.5 yards.
And part of me thinks it'd be best for all parties if it just waited until Jacksonville. Do the road game. Don't do it against the top-ranked rushing defense in the NFL where you've got a couple offensive linemen banged up in front of you. Like, if he were to play on Sunday, you would have the awkward conversation of, like, should we announce him? Should we be worried about how much should we show him on the Jumbotron? Like, all of those things that might sound so stupid, those would be conversations. Whereas if he waits a week and all of a sudden he goes to Jacksonville and rushes for, 80 yards on 14 carries, he's going to come back and get a pretty warm reception inside of Lucas Oil Stadium.
Especially if they were to win the game.
The week after that there. So I am thinking, maybe I'm thinking a little worst case scenario, Andy, but I just am like, boy, if he goes out there and plays 5 to 7 carries and aggravates an injury, that is not only awful for Jonathan Taylor, it's awful for the Colts too.
There's a lot of things with Jonathan Taylor here, and I would agree with you for the most part that the chance of seeing him play on Sunday is probably, or at least seeing him play very much. Now, the other part of this, I would love it if they just pulled the Band-Aid off and they just threw him out there and he was feeling good and it was a hold-in, if you will, and everyone's feeling good and you move on. There's 2 things for me. Number one would be, you mentioned Zach Moss. With the injuries that are compiling in the NFL, and with the injuries especially, KB, that are compiling right now with the Indianapolis Colts, you look at Zach Moss, and, that position doesn't get paid because it is often injured, right? And you are so damn thin at that position. It's like, yes, you need Jonathan Taylor because you can win more games. It's better for Anthony Richardson. It's better for the team. No doubt it's better for JT. All of those things on the table, but they don't have anyone besides Zach Moss. Deion Jackson was cut, and Trey Sermon's getting like 1 yard every time he touches the ball. Okay, and that may be his fault. It may not be his fault. I don't know, but you take Zach Moss from this team. We've talked about linemen and corners and everything else. Good God, if you took Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor were not ready against the Tennessee Titans or the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't even know where you would go. I don't know. Like, how many yards would Trey Sermon, what would he running back against the Tennessee Titans? And then the other thing for me, I wrote this down last night as something I wanted to mention and talk about. Go back to the Indiana-Kentucky basketball discussion that we had. People like to feel that they're getting one over on another fan base or that they're winning an argument, right? If me and you get into an argument on Sports Talk Radio, one of us is going to want to feel that we walk away with a win. That is natural, right? I think that is pretty natural. If JT comes back and he's playing in these games, do the Colts feel like they won the battle with JT? Now, there's going to be another battle later in the year, after the season, the franchise tag, all of those things. We're going to get to another battle, and that might be the bigger war. But I don't know if JT doesn't get traded, if the NFL didn't say, sure, we'll offer you all of this compensation. Do the Colts sit back and say, Ballard and Irsay saying, maybe we did play this one right. We went 2-2, and then we got Taylor back, and now we got a chance to win some games, and he may not like us, but he's going to be playing for $4 million this year in Lucas Oil for us. I just wonder.
Yeah, that seems a little bit too short term for me to declare a winner. I feel like it's a little bit more of a, we will have to wait to declare a winner per se down the road. I know it's not necessarily the answer that makes for great radio on October 4th here on a Wednesday morning, but I look more at this Taylor situation as, Is there a hanging cloud that continues for the next few months? Is he gone after the 2023 season?
Sure.
And now you're a bit in scramble mode of, again, what do these pieces look like next to Anthony Richardson? That's where I kind of view a little bit more of it. I don't know if you can say, even if, like, let's say Taylor comes back and, whatever, has a nice end to this 2023 season and, I don't know, he signs a 2-year extension with the Colts. It's hard to just all of a sudden hold everybody's hand and raise them up like they just won a boxing match and say,
right,
winners. Like,
right.
It was still a pretty ugly situation.
It's been bad PR
a very
for the Colts.
Public situation.
Right.
And at some point, that is sitting there in the brain of Anthony Richardson. I don't know if it's ever going to matter, but it is a negative situation that Anthony Richardson had to witness in his first NFL offseason. And it might, be brushed under the rug and it might never matter again. Or if things begin to go awry, it might be something that all of a sudden Richardson and his camp one day are like, gosh, that was handled so ugly. Boy, I did not like that at all. That was disappointing to see. I didn't feel the support back then. Speaking of Richardson, I do have a couple of
fire away.
little nerdy things to throw at you from Sunday. I was watching last night. Sean McVay does a coach's show with the Rams, and he had a really just kind of out of the blue comment about Richardson. It was an Aaron Donald play that I think DeMarco Farr might be the radio analyst for the Rams, and all of a sudden he briefly mentions Richardson and Sean McVay in the very McVay voice. You know how you can kind of like randomly interject and get a little bit high pitched. He's just like, he's a freaking stud talking about Richardson, and said the guy's a problem and had plenty of praise for Shane Steichen. And I thought something on Sunday that we didn't hit on a whole lot exiting Monday, but if you look at Richardson there in week 4, Andy, he threw the ball downfield, attempting to throw the ball downfield, and completed passes down the field better than any quarterback in the NFL last week. And again, there are plenty of numbers that I won't bore you with to back that up. But that is a huge reason why you drafted him. You look at the box score and you see 44%. And that's an ugly, ugly looking number. He had one of the worst expected completion percentages in the NFL last week. Again, that's a number that has to climb. But the reason why you said he can be an inconsistent thrower is because we'll offset that with more big plays down the field. Week 1, when he played against Jacksonville, that was dink and dunk central.
It was.
That was Gardner Minshew
offense
playing quarterback.
Right.
You did not see that on Sunday. And I think, honestly, more of it has to do with his creativity to make some extra plays happen, make some outside of the pocket throws. And that's the other angle, Andy, that I'm going to watch. I went back and, again, this is kind of a rough chart of it, but I went back and looked at all 25 throws from Richardson, and I was curious, okay, inside the pocket, I felt like that was a struggle for him on Sunday. Outside the pocket, I thought it was, if you're a Rams fan, oh bleep, here comes a big play.
Well, that's why we harped on the final possession there. When
all 3 passes inside the pocket.
When everything was in the pocket, where everything that they had been having success at the previous, quarter and a half had been, moving the pocket and Anthony Richardson creating. I can understand McVay. They get a defensive lineman, shooting the gap and going after Anthony Richardson. He roll out to his right and hit Josh Downs. Whose computer was that? Was that mine? Was that mine again?
Yeah.
We still haven't figured that out. Yeah. I just have ESPN.com up. That's all I have.
Get the morning email at 7:48. Richardson inside the pocket.
Okay.
Let's go outside the pocket first.
Okay, outside the pocket.
When he was making, I thought, his most playmaking, he was 5 of 6. Think about the Mo Alley Cox touchdown. That's a play outside the pocket. He had a big throw to Ogletree. The 4th downer to Granson outside the pocket. The 2-point play that doesn't factor into these stats, the 2-point play to Zach Moss outside the pocket. Andy, if you look inside the pocket then, again, 5 of 6 outside. Inside the pocket, he was 6 of 19. So that is,
it's bad.
30-ish%.
Yeah.
So these are areas that you certainly want to make strides in, and it is why late in the game, when you had an opportunity to win it there in regulation, I could not believe we watched 3. I like what Shane Steichen's done with Anthony Richardson a ton. Cannot reiterate that enough. I hated that final drive. The fact that you kept him in the pocket for all 3 throws, and the first 2 really didn't have a chance. The third one with Granson, who knows, 50-50 to the Rams DB get a hand in there. But to me, that all of a sudden allowed Aaron Donald to just rush and not have to worry about, oh boy, is he going to get out of the pocket? And do I need to readjust my pass rush plan? And, one of those things, Andy, where if you see Aaron Donald on one of those final three plays lined up opposite Blake Freeland, I would think a rollout to the right would be pretty advantageous to avoid Donald and then also play to Richardson's strengths. So, again, that is something that I'm going to be watching for moving forward. I guess both those items. One is, do we see more of the downfield stuff that we saw from Richardson more than anybody in the NFL on Sunday? And then two, inside the pocket versus outside the pocket.
Well, let me ask you this. How much of this is, and I feel like Lamar Jackson early in his career, following him at college. In college, you can run any offense, right? Like, fans don't care. The quarterback can run. The quarterback doesn't have to run. Hell, anybody can run. And, fans aren't, picking apart, okay, our offense looks like this. It's got to be this way. In the NFL, Lamar Jackson got a lot of, you got to throw from the pocket when that wasn't his strength, and he's got much better at that. You see that this year with a, at a period in time, and I don't know what it is right now, I'd have to look, but a completion percentage that was up over 70-75%, and he was, he was good. I mean, he was pretty efficient against Cleveland, but people were harping on that, and the other argument was, well, that's not what he's good at, but the NFL, you need to be able to do that. It doesn't need to be the best part of your game, but you still you can't be 30-40% completion percentage. That's, I guess, how I feel, and I guess that would be kind of the comparison with Anthony Richardson is as much as Steichen can run AR, as much as he can get outside, as elusive he can be, whether it's part of the play, rolling the pocket, or it's just him, the offensive line gives in and Richardson does what he does. The other side of it, Steichen probably has to think, we still have to be able to do this, and this is part of the maturation that he misses when he misses a game and a half, right? Yeah. I mean, when you look at that 6 of 19, to get better at that, you have to do that. And that's going to be probably the part of his game, don't you think, that Steichen will have to grow the most? We know he can run. We know getting out of the pocket is his strength. It's just... But to win games, him being in the pocket throwing passes is not. I mean, it's not going to be 6 of 19, but it's not going to be 65% completion percentage.
And obviously, NFL teams are going to see this, Andy, and they're going to try to do their best at keeping him in the pocket. You often hear that when the Colts face Lamar Jackson, keep him in the well. Don't let him get out to where it gets to be backyard football, and you're at the mercy of one of the more athletic freaks in the entire NFL. And I go back to a Chris Ballard quote. And John is kind of asking this as well. John just tweeted at me, something I've been thinking about with Richardson is, do we have a smaller window? Like at some point his legs will go, or they won't be as effective as they are. Again, that's a little bit more of a down the road. It brings up a conversation, Andy, that you and I had a couple weeks ago. What does Richardson look like at 26? What does he look like at 28? I mean, those are questions that I do have. I don't want to focus too much on that, but...
Well, that's when he hits 30 to me.
But just look at the careers of Michael Vick. Look at the careers of Robert Griffin III. Any sort of dual threat quarterbacks that you want to throw in there, those guys did not have a ton of staying power, 8-10 years into their careers. But again, just focusing in the here and now, Ballard has said before, at some point, and this is talking about quarterbacks, at some point, you have to deliver from the pocket. Because either a team is forcing you to deliver from the pocket, or injuries arise. And you just can't be this dynamic.
Your body's not what it was.
Of the pocket.
Right.
Or, yes, you're not.
Yeah, you're just not what it is.
At 31, you're not what you were at 21. So, again, these are just all, I think, little items throughout this first season for Anthony Richardson to point out that you see. And it doesn't mean, end all be all, but I think these are things to watch, how they evolve. Are they trends we see week in and week out? Because coming up on Sunday, Andy, the hope there is as long as he makes it to halftime, that's the longest stretch he's played in his NFL career. So, it's now like, okay, stack 2 or 3 weeks together. How does that look now in month number 2 of his NFL career? All right, on the other side, Stephen Holder is going to join us. Again, he had an interesting conversation with Chris Ballard I want to ask Stephen about, and also the Jonathan Taylor side of it. The Colts are singing Kumbaya on how Taylor feels. Stephen's been pretty plugged in to both sides of the story. Does he feel like the same thing is there with Jonathan Taylor? I should mention this, and I almost apologize for even bringing it up because I didn't really vet this, but I had someone reach out to me, Andy, last night, one of our listeners, and said, and they preface by saying, Kevin, I'm sorry to even ask you this question, but I do find it somewhat relevant. They had been scrolling through the Colts Instagram likes,
Okay.
and they noticed
Let's go. I love this.
on the announcement about Taylor making his return on Wednesday.
Okay.
Less Colts players liked that picture than they normally have been liking.
Fantastic. That's the kind of data I need. When you say I don't live on Peeg's message board, that guy does.
Oh.
I like that listener.
No, he's got a Peegs
He's
account,
on
and he's got
Instagram.
a Big Blue Nation account.
You're damn right
He's
he
on
does.
both boards.
You're damn right he is.
Lots of tinfoil, too, apparently.
Lots of tinfoil. So, Stephen Holder's probably going to hate me for asking that, but whatever. I'll throw it his way. All right. Well, Stephen Holder joins us next.
Fan.
WIBC HD2, HD3, Indianapolis.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, busy on this Wednesday, hanging out in the drivehubler.com studios. Reminder, Colts Happy Hour on Friday at 6 o'clock, and then on Sunday, we'll get you ready beginning with JMV at 9 a.m. KB usually going about 9:15 or so with him. Colts and Titans pregame beginning at 9 a.m. All the pregame, all the, obviously, Mayte and company will have the call, and then the postgame show with Greg Rakestraw and company. They'll have you as we get you ready for week 5 of the NFL season. Dustin Dopirak going to join us at 8:30. Marc Ross, former NFL executive and now insider for the NFL Network. He'll join us coming up at 9 o'clock. All right, let's talk to him. It's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, and on the Payless Liquors hotline, it's Stephen Holder, who follows the Colts for ESPN.com. Stephen, a very good morning to you. How are you?
I'm doing well. We will see what today or this week brings, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a busy week, and we cannot wait. Shane Steichen speaking on Monday. I think KB used the word kumbaya. The Colts putting a smile on the entire Jonathan Taylor situation. What did you make of what Steichen had to say, and what could happen? What may happen this week?
Well, for a guy who went to extreme lengths to not talk about Jonathan Taylor for like the last 2 months. He went to great lengths on Monday to tell us how much he loves Jonathan Taylor and to tell us what a great player he is and what an addition he will be. It's the most expansive, I think, Shane Steichen has ever been on like any damn thing ever. I'm not kidding. Like, it was very surreal, in fact. Now, that has nothing to do with whether Jonathan Taylor is where he needs to be, in terms of with the team and mentally and in terms of his happiness. I have no idea on any of that, but I thought it was striking and more than a little notable just how forceful Shane Steichen's comments were. So, and as Kevin pointed out, I think that Shane Steichen saying that he had productive conversations with Jonathan Taylor is a promising thing. So we'll see. We don't have all the answers yet, but these are definitely this is definitely a different direction, I would say.
Stephen, 2 questions for you. What is your biggest question to Jonathan Taylor? / do you get any indication from the Taylor camp that they have mended or quieted down their stance with how the Colts have handled this situation?
Okay, so the first, tell me again, the first question you said.
Yeah, sorry, that was awful radio by me asking you 2 questions.
No, you're good.
What is the biggest question you have for Jonathan Taylor?
All right, so I'll answer that one first. I think for Jonathan Taylor, the first question, look, there will be a lot of talk about, okay, what was really going on with the ankle, and I think that's important. I don't think it's the most important thing, though, because we all kind of realize what this was, and I don't have to spell it out for you, okay? That's not the most important thing for me. I think the biggest thing is more how do you move forward and what does the future hold? Because even if this is settled now, and actually settled is definitely the wrong word. Like, it's not settled. He's just, if he ends up playing here and this moves forward like it appears it will, all that means is that he just kind of ran out of options. So I just wonder, what does the future hold, and how do you conduct yourself moving forward when the team still has control over him? You can say what you want, but I fully expect them to use the franchise tag. All right, they can say they're not going to, but if there's no deal, they're going to use the franchise tag. Like, this is not hard. So anyway, that's the first thing. On your second question, in terms of whether Taylor and his camp have kind of modified their stance, I would say my conversations have suggested that they have not completely backed off from where they were. However, I would also say that I don't think things are as heated as they were, for sure. That is definitely clear to me. I don't get that sense at all, and I'm talking about from both sides. I don't know who took the first step. I can't speak to that, but I definitely sense that there has been kind of a breather has been taken by the parties where it's just not as inflamed as it was, I would say, a month ago. When this thing came to a head with the potential trade talks and all of that. It was kind of at a zenith at that point. I don't think we're there right now. That does not mean it's settled, but I'm just saying that is a difference in posture.
Stephen Holder with us here on the Wake Up Call on the Fan on a Wednesday. Files the Colts for ESPN.com. All the factors that go into him potentially playing, whether it be this week or next week. Do you want to bring him back when it's a home game against a great defensive front with the Titans? How does his body feel? We don't know that. How much can he learn the system? If he comes back, would you ease him into it? Maybe 5-6 carries instead of 26 carries. There's so many factors that go into it. What do you think those factors are? And I guess, what do you think happens this week? KB did the numbers, 53, 54 practices. He hasn't been on the field with the Colts since December 15th of last year.
It's a long time, no question about it, and he's missed a lot. Now, that being said, he has been, or at least through training camp, he was there for most of training camp, and we presume in the meetings with his offensive teammates. So that definitely makes a difference, and that's a factor here. And from a positive perspective, that means that he has an understanding of the scheme. Now, whether he's been in all of the meetings recently where he's kind of been rehabbing and then kind of departing from the facility, at least in previous weeks, I can't speak to that. I don't know what his level of involvement has been lately. But Jonathan Taylor is not an idiot. He's played a lot of football, and I think you can get him involved at least on a limited basis as he is now. And that will boil down to just his conditioning level and those kinds of things. But all of the indicators I've gotten on that have been positive. And I thought even running backs coach DeAndre Smith last week telling me that he looks great in his words. Quote, he looks great in his workouts. So he was effusive in his praise for Jonathan Taylor's physical state right now. So there's a lot of positives that indicate Jonathan Taylor is ready to play football. That does not mean he plays this week, but I think leaving the door open for him to play this week says a lot. And I don't think it's just talk. I don't necessarily expect it, but I'm also not ruling it out because this guy, it's not as if this guy came off an ACL tear. I mean, this was just sort of a nagging ankle. It's been in decent shape for quite some time from all appearances. So I don't think that's really even a factor here. This is about conditioning and just, will he be able to go out there and play without hurting the team, in terms of his understanding of the scheme.
Again, Stephen Holder's with us here from ESPN.com. I've got one more on the Taylor front. And, Stephen, I'll preface this by saying this is not necessarily the reason I'm asking the question, but I did have a listener reach out and be like, Kevin, this is very conspiracy theory, prefaced by that, but I'm scrolling through the Colts Instagram and I'm noticing that more Colts players like the non-Jonathan Taylor pictures than the Jonathan Taylor picture of him being announced. He's back on Wednesday.
That's journalism right there, Stephen.
Yeah, that is certainly journalism 101 in the year 2023. But the question, I think, off of that is, how do you think the locker room views this Taylor situation? It's probably not a universal opinion. I'm sure the running backs feel differently. They're like, hell yeah, man, carry our position's flag here. But how do you think the locker room feels about how this has been handled by Taylor and the Colts?
For a second there, I started to think I was on the midday show, which I have no problem with.
Yeah, I know. Jake's rubbing off on me. Sorry.
All good. It is a good question, and I don't think there's a universal answer. I think you're right about that. But look, football players like routine. They don't like distractions, disruptions, etc. However, I can tell you that Jonathan Taylor is a very popular figure in that locker room, as you obviously know, Kevin.
Sure.
I mean, he's very well liked. He works hard. I mean, despite whatever impact this current situation may have had on his reputation and how he's viewed, and that's for the individual to decide. Everything we've known about Jonathan Taylor up to this point is that this guy is a guy who leaves everything on the line. He practices every day. He's a guy who he obviously physically has been very, very tough, hasn't missed games in the past. So I think that has, more than anything, shaped this team's and his teammates' opinions of him. That's who Taylor has been. And players also understand the economics of football. Everybody in that locker room wants to make more money. Now, they haven't conducted themselves in the same way, and they haven't handled that approached that in the same fashion, certainly. But on a basic level, everybody, that sort of resonates with every player, particularly a guy who has had the contributions of Jonathan Taylor. So, I think there may be mixed opinions to some degree, but I don't think there's going to be anything but welcoming Jonathan Taylor with open arms, because he had some sort of investment in the bank before this, with that team, and is very well liked and respected for very good reason.
You had moving on from Taylor, I thought you had an interesting NBA comp that you were kind of comparing Anthony Richardson to yesterday that you mentioned on Twitter. I was hoping you could expand on that and maybe touch on your text conversation that you had with Chris Ballard after the game.
Yeah, so, this really was born of I guess I was kind of, maybe I was trolling. Okay, I admit I was trolling. There was a tweet that someone put out alleging that, Anthony Richardson had quietly been the worst quarterback in the NFL based on a couple of metrics. One is the analytics metric CPOE, and I think the other one was I don't recall. I think it was an efficiency marker. I can't remember. The point is, first of all, that was not an accurate reading of the chart. That's the first thing. Second of all, I think it speaks to some degree the reality of Anthony Richardson, which is this: he's not a perfect player, and in many ways, you look at a guy like C.J. Stroud, and he is the sort of prototype quarterback that we think about. And I don't mean he's the best quarterback. I'm just saying he's more conventional, right? He stands in the pocket, he makes accurate throws, and any coach can work with that, right? I think that is how we have customarily viewed football in that position. With Richardson, it's very different. How do you measure Richardson through the conventional metrics when he is not a conventional quarterback? That is what I see. And so I think we have to take that into account. And if you watch him, this is very obvious. There are times when Anthony Richardson hurts the Colts on a play-to-play basis. He makes a bad decision. He makes an errant throw, and you're banging your head against the wall. And then he does what he did in the second half on Sunday, and I don't care what level of football you're talking about. We've all seen that guy put a team on his back and say, we're not going to lose today. Now, they did, but he did everything in his power to prevent that. Now, the NBA reference came in where I said, I see him as kind of I don't want to say a volume shooter, but that's probably the most recognizable way to tackle this. An NBA shooter, a perimeter guy who, not a shooter, but an offensive player who attacks and maybe doesn't shoot a high percentage, but you just know this is a guy who can create his own shot, right? Every team needs that guy, because if you're relying on the system all the time and the pick and roll to get an open shot or just running your system depending on open shots, well, if a creative defensive approach comes in, now your system is going sideways and it's not getting you those open shots. So what you have to do in that situation is you got to get a guy who can say, give me the ball, get out of the way, I'm going to create a shot. And that's Anthony Richardson. And I don't know how you measure that guy analytically. It might not work out, and it might not make sense. But you just know that he can make a play. So anyway, that's a long answer, but that I hope makes sense. The last thing you asked me about was Chris Ballard, and I did have a quick conversation with him on Monday. I approached him about something else I was trying to clarify, and he answered my question, but he immediately turned his attention to Anthony Richardson, and he just said, I'm usually really pissed off after losses, and we all know from sitting in the press box with him at road games that is absolutely true. He is absolutely inconsolable and has no control of his emotions. Okay,
I saw him in the bathroom when they were down 23-0 on Sunday, and he looked like he wanted to absolutely murder me. Which maybe
we may have wanted
normally,
to.
But yeah.
Well, he may actually want to kill you.
Sure,
that's
sure.
the story.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, so he said, this one is different. He says, this guy, he's just different. And even in a loss, you see what the future could hold. And he's got to put it all together. And that may never happen for all we know. But everything tells me that Anthony Richardson will put it together. And I think the reason for that is I think just from game to game, quarter to quarter, you see progress. I see a guy who grows and doesn't make the same mistake twice. So everything is positive. I'm telling you, I said it yesterday with the midday show. I'll say it again here. I have sensed more optimism in that building I've never sensed more optimism about a single player in that building not named Andrew Luck. That's it, period. I mean, he has given them more optimism than anybody since Andrew Luck.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com with us following the Colts. Okay, I'm looking at your tweets, and I did see these. The one that you mentioned, completion percentage above expected, which is CPOE, and the other is EPA per play. Those are the two. Whatever those mean, that was the tweet.
Let me be clear. Like, those things matter.
Sure.
They do matter. And they oftentimes can tell you a story, but they do not tell the full story.
Right.
Especially about a guy like this.
Total agreement. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to throw a bunch at you here. Your thoughts, getting down 23-0, the valiant comeback, but you did get down 23-0 after such a week of praise after the Baltimore game. So a winnable game and a close loss on Sunday, and then in come the Tennessee Titans. And then to throw just all this at you, Stephen, the injuries are piling up for the Colts. There has to be some worry there. So looking back, looking forward, and then the injuries, what do you make of all of that?
Well, look, the first thing, I'll take the injuries first. I mean, my favorite thing to do is to say I told you so, and I'm going to say it now. Look, this team did not have a lot of depth. We said that all summer, and their depth is going to be tested now. And I tell you what, I mean, there's reason for concern. There was always reason for concern, but now it's real. So we'll see. I think that they have, particularly at cornerback, we knew they didn't have a lot of depth there. We knew they had just an unbelievable amount of youth there. And so here we are now, with Dallas Flowers out for the season. That's a big injury. I mean, I know nationally people will look at that injury and kind of scoff and like, never heard of that guy. And I get that. And that's probably true for most. But for their situation, look, everything is relative. And for their situation, he mattered a lot. And
short term and long term.
Good snaps. Yeah, absolutely. And giving them some good snaps, in fact. So that's a big one. I think the other thing I can say is, I mean, look at the loss of DeForest Buckner on Sunday and the impact that had. Now, any team that loses a player of that caliber is going to suffer, but I don't think they did a good job compensating for him, and they may have to look at how they handle that from a lineup perspective going forward. So, look, I think here they come against the Titans, another team that is flawed, not a perfect team. We'll see how they compete, but I think that's really the bottom line. They've got to compete, and what we saw with the Colts getting down 23-0, I think that's just a reality of who they are. They're not a perfect team. They're a flawed team. They have weaknesses that we know of and that are obvious. So again, I think we knew this. We knew this going in, and we should not get ahead of ourselves because of that win at Baltimore or the way they dominated in Houston. I think the Colts are very much a week-to-week team and not a team that's going to be favored in tons of games, but a team that can win any game.
Steven, last one for me, and appreciate your time here on this Wednesday morning. I do want to get in a Shaquille Leonard question if I could. 4 games into the season, he's played about 200 snaps. We, again, have seen the playing time dwindle a little bit. I know Gus Bradley mentioned yesterday some of that had to do with specific kind of personnel groupings with the Rams. I would say my concern with Leonard through 4 games is in those 200 snaps, Steven, I can maybe remember one play he's made, like one play that stood out. And it'd be one thing if I saw like 2 to 3 flashes a game or every other game, and then it's just like, okay, if he just knocks off the other rust, that high-level playmaking is in there. I think of a tackle for loss against Jacksonville, and that's really it. How would you observe what you've seen from Leonard here through the first 4 games?
No, I have the same takeaway. It's very jarring to see Shaq Leonard out there on the field and not see those game-changing plays, because he has done it even under the most challenging circumstances. And I think specifically of 2021, when I believe that's right. Yeah, 2021, when he was hurt then, and he was definitely not running at full speed. You could tell that his gait was impacted by the ankle even 2 years ago, and he made just one game-changing play after another that year. I mean, I thought from a turnover perspective, he has never had a better season than 2021. So that was – so to now see what we're seeing now, it is kind of – it's certainly unusual, and I think concerning is maybe fair, just because it's not typical for him. Now, I mentioned this on the show yesterday. I think it's worth mentioning again. I don't know all the particulars of this because I am not a defensive coordinator. I just know that his role in Gus Bradley's defense is definitely modified from that of Matt Eberflus's system. Now, I don't know if that is a primary reason for him not making the game-changing plays. I do know that it does kind of tee up the middle linebacker to make a lot of plays, and I think we're seeing that, or have seen, from Zaire Franklin. So that may be in play here too. But at the same time, at the end of the day, there's a presence that Shaq Leonard has always had, and I think we're all waiting to see him show that presence again. The last thing I would say is that he has historically been able to freelance a little bit, particularly in the Matt Eberflus system. I don't know whether he has the same freedom in this system, so I'm just throwing out potential factors, right? I mean, it's too early for us to really zero in on any of this, but these are all variables that could be involved here. But ultimately, I think he's got to be able to physically be the player he was, to then tap into the instincts that God gave him, and that's why I think his challenge is right now.
Again, a walkthrough today coming up for the Colts. We'll await anything more on the Jonathan Taylor front. First official practice sounds like will be Thursday, and I'm not holding my breath at Taylor. Do you think Taylor talks this week, Steven?
No idea. Have not gotten a definitive answer on that, and believe me, I did ask.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, Steven, thank you for the time.
Appreciate it, Steven.
All right, guys.
That's Stephen Holder right there. Again, certainly a lot of intrigue inside of Colts headquarters on the Anthony Richardson front, particularly what he showed there late in the game on Sunday. We'll talk some Pacers coming up with Dustin Dopirak in their first training camp practice yesterday. I had listener Luke reach out to me and said, in a way, is there not enough shooting in the starting lineup? I thought that was kind of an interesting take. We've talked so much about defense. All of a sudden, if your best shooter's your point guard, does that hinder anything for the Pacers? Be a question to throw to Dustin here coming up in a few. Andy, let's lead off the morning check down with the big Indiana-Kentucky news from yesterday.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, KB, you're right. The big news, Indiana and Kentucky finally, after 15 years, a bunch of crying from Calipari, and then, whatever happened in the Archie Miller tenure, they are now playing Indiana and Kentucky December 20th, 2025 in Rupp Arena, then December 27th in 2026. That will be at Lucas Oil, back to Rupp Arena in 2027, and then Assembly Hall in 2028. I'm sure we'll talk about it later parts of the 9 o'clock hour, but if you want to hear our conversation on that, check out the podcast. We opened the show with that at 7 o'clock today. But those two teams playing 4 times upcoming, beginning in 25.
All right, Major League Baseball playoffs from yesterday. You had a couple of road teams get a win. One would be the Diamondbacks. They win at the Brewers, so a chance to move on today. The other road team would be the Rangers. Boy, that was ugly from the Rays. Tons of errors. Jerry Montgomery really good for the Rangers.
Low attendance.
on the mound.
Did you see that?
Was it 19,000?
Yeah.
It was 19,000, and it was like noticeably empty, but everyone's like, this is what baseball gets for these early 3 o'clock games. Number one, they always fill stadiums. Other people do. It's Tampa. We understand that. Number two, I mean, everyone in Tampa, 3 o'clock, that's prime time. That's dinner time.
Oh, yeah.
They got to be in bed by 7:30. I mean,
Pina colada when you sit down at your seat.
3 o'clock's a perfect time for Tampa Bay. They couldn't make that game early enough.
It looked like the Rays were taking a nap in their fielding efforts yesterday.
It was because it was prime dinner time that's why the game is low attended.
That could be it.
Yeah, I got to get my table at Cracker Barrel. I can't be bothered by this baseball game.
So right now you have these teams trying to clinch today. Again, these are just best of 3 series. The Twins ended that long 18-game playoff losing streak yesterday. They beat the Blue Jays, so they're up 1-0. Again, the Rangers over the Rays, and then in the NL you had Arizona over Milwaukee and Philadelphia over Miami. So those 4 teams that all won yesterday, they have the chance to clinch today.
I think there's college football tonight. Are
we already there at the MAC? Is it MAC?
Gambling degenerates. We have New Mexico State. We have New Mexico State, Florida International, and Middle Tennessee and Jacksonville State. Look, Conference USA tonight. Look, Conference USA doubleheader if you want to get on the sports gambling apps. How about that?
That is unbelievable. Thursday night football this week. Mark, you surprised that your Bears are only a 5-point underdog?
It's dropped a little bit. I think it was 6.5. So some money's coming on Chicago right now.
Wow. Is that out of your pocket?
No, not from me.
Did you move the line?
No. I don't know what to expect anymore. So might be Matt Eberflus's last stand.
I think you do know what to expect. A loss, right?
Yeah. I'm bracing for it.
And a loss in a funny way.
Gosh, could you see the mini bye week fire? Is that where you were going there with Eberflus?
I like that.
That is some rumblings.
I like
Chicago.
those. I like those rumblings. That bye week. Oh yeah.
Other week 5 items of note. Great game in London coming up Sunday morning. That would be Buffalo and Jacksonville. Certainly a lot of eyes. Again, Jacksonville with back-to-back London games, and then they return home to face the Colts. So in a way, I know the Colts didn't take advantage of it with the Rams. I would think that would be decent news for the Colts after 2 weeks in London for the Jags. And we I don't think it's even probably, we get one of our games of the year, right? Sunday Night Football, Cowboys and 49ers.
That's a huge one. I cannot wait.
I love the 49ers in that game. Although that crowd, that's the crowd that you're going to see the most potential fights on the next day on Monday. You got to scan the internet to see who got in a good fight.
Yeah. Usually involves the Raiders.
Cowboys, Niners, that's the one for me. That it's a leader in the clubhouse.
Section 622.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
Maybe a little Ravens Steelers is pretty good. Those two are probably the best ones.
Did you see the Ravens Steelers mention it'll be the 34th meeting between John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, and that is the second most games ever between 2 head coaches?
Really?
You've got to go back to, and this shows you how impressive that is. It is like in 2023. Can you believe that those two have lasted in their respective stops that long?
Tomlin's getting some heat finally,
right? But still,
but you're spot on. You're spot on.
34 games. That's over 17 seasons. You have to go back to George Halas versus Curly Lambeau,
of course,
to find a head coaching duo that have faced each other more than Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. And, of course, the Colts, they've got the Titans coming up Sunday at 1 o'clock. Mark Dykton, the play-by-play voice for Sunday. Come on now.
Spiro Ditas.
Spiro, baby.
Yes. It was only a matter of time before he popped his head in the
Spiro and Archuleta coming up Sunday. Last I saw, Colts slight favorite in this one.
Let's see here. Colts are favored by, no, it's even right now.
Even?
Yeah, it's even. Maybe yesterday
it
was
app and I'm
favored
seeing
by
1.
Yeah, it could be. I'm looking at ESPN. I don't know what they feed, if it's DraftKings or FanDuel or what they do. So, yeah, again, this is like the 3rd week in a row. If you like the Colts, whether it's 1, 1.5 even, go out there and bet them. You can make some money. Or the other way if you like the Tennessee Titans.
I think Jim Irsay hates the Titans more than just about any other team present day based off what they've done to his franchise. Certainly he needs to be, very mindful of the type of audience there in Nashville if he wants to take the Irsay collection down there. But that's stuff we can get into a little bit tomorrow and the rest of the week with the Colts and Titans meeting on Sunday. But on the other side, we'll talk Pacers. Dustin Dopirak joins us next.
107.5 The Fan. It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I was listening live. That's my man JMV saying it's time to do the must-win in Week 5. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
I'm pretty sure a few years ago he had a must-win for the season opener.
I love it. That's the NFL. You get 16, now 17 of them. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, you'll get JMV. You'll get more of that coming up at 3 o'clock today. Query and Company at noon. We got you covered. All the Colts stuff leading up to Week 5. Colts and Titans, all that coverage beginning Sunday at 9 a.m. Should mention as well, we'll talk to Dustin Dopirak here in just a second. Pacers, Grizzlies, that first preseason game Sunday at 7:30. Well, let's head on back to the Payless Liquors hotline. Dustin Dopirak joins us following the Pacers for the start. Dustin, it's been quite the journey, my man. It's good to talk to you. Finally, both of us in Indianapolis. How are you, and a good morning?
Doing well. Good morning to you also. Again, welcome to Indy, Andy. Happy to have you up here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Let's start here. I love this Pacers season because to me, it's very black or white, right? It's go make the playoffs. It's a clear line. To me, there's not any give from what they have. The expectations are to go make the playoffs, and we can argue whether that's in the play-in or top 6 or whatever it may be. Do you feel that way following this team, that it's clear, the mission is clear, you need to be in the postseason here in a few months?
Yeah, and obviously that's kind of a reasonable expectation. You're just talking about making the top 10 in the East. I mean, I don't think it's a disappointment if they're in the play-in round as opposed to getting a top 6 seed. Obviously, I think top 6 would be a little bit above. That would be, I guess, a surprise or at least a little bit above expectations. But I think that's the only step they need to make. I mean, they were 11th last year. They missed out by about 6 games. You've got a couple teams in there that weakened their rosters. Since then, the team that was with them, Washington, went into full rebuild mode. Obviously Brooklyn moved Durant and Irving by the end of the year. Toronto moved some guys. It makes sense for them to make a leap, basically, and there's room for them to move up there. But they've been, reasonably clear about that. The players, at least, have been very clear that is their goal, that they intend to be a playoff team. Management is a little bit less on that. Rick Carlisle is not really going either way. Chad Buchanan has just basically just said, we're trying to get better, basically, so that they're not trying to put themselves in that position where if you don't make the playoffs, somebody gets fired. But I think that they look at this as their next step, and that they've they had last year where they had a dramatic improvement from sort of year one under Carlisle to year two, with Halliburton out of the mix and whatnot. And I think they feel like with the pieces they got that it's reasonable for them to move up in that, at least in the 40-win range, maybe up to 45, and be a team that at least gets in the play-in round and maybe actually gets into the playoffs.
And he's Dustin Dopirak covering the Pacers for the Indianapolis Star, and he's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Dustin, as always, thank you for the time. I feel like in football it's a little bit easier to kind of see an obvious defensive change. Oh, that guy was the 3-4 defensive coordinator. Now they're bringing in the 4-3 defensive coordinator. In basketball, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit harder. At least maybe we just don't pay attention to that. It's not like every assistant staff has coordinator labels. But it does seem like the Pacers have made a change defensively. Ronald Norad now in Atlanta. Jim Boylan, former NBA head coach, is now on the bench for the Pacers. Is that where you point to, like, the obvious defensive changes? Because personnel-wise, sure, Bruce Brown is here, but it's not like they made wholesale changes personnel-wise.
No, I mean, they had a couple. Obviously, they addressed it in the draft, too, by going out and getting Jarris Walker. So, a few things here. Obviously, as you mentioned, Jim Boylan is in, Ronald Norwood is out. Rick Carlisle made a point of saying that there will not be coordinators per se, that it will be kind of a more collective way of addressing it. But obviously, Boylan is the defensive guy. He's had defensive coordinator jobs in the past. I think he was, the guy in San Antonio when they won in 2014. I know he won a title as an assistant with the Rockets in '95. So he's going to have a lot of say to do with it. There are going to be schematic changes. Basically, the guys were all saying yesterday after day one of practice they can see a difference. It's not going to be something dramatic. Obviously, there's still going to be a man team, but they're going to basically the way that they help is going to be a little bit different. They're going to put more emphasis on one-on-one defense. They basically Aaron Nesmith said that basically there's going to be a difference in sort of the shots they're willing to give up, the places on the floor that they're trying to push guys, basically the shots that they want taken and they don't want taken. So that there's going to be something, if you're going to watch it very, very closely, then you're going to notice. I'm sure Kaylin Cooper is going to be able to break it down in ways much better than I will sometime during the season. She'll be able to really show that from an X's and O's perspective. But there is going to be a change, but I think they're asking everybody to get a little bit better. They're in a position, I think, that's interesting where I think they've got – you can put out a really good defensive five right now if you're them, but it's not necessarily your best offensive five. So that's going to be the weird balance that they're going to have to strike. But, I mean, you can put out – if you've got a lineup with either Nembhard or Nesmith, or Nembhard or McConnell at the 1, Brown at the 2, Nesmith at the 3, Walker maybe at the 4, and Turner at the 5, or even Jackson at the 5. You've got a really good defensive lineup, but that's not necessarily the best offensive lineup, so they got to kind of balance – Halliburton, Heel, Mathurin, Toppin, guys that are really going to score you a bunch of points in lineups with other guys that they can really trust to guard somebody. So that's going to be an interesting piece with their rotations. They've already got a really good competitive camp going. But, their best defensive guys and their best offensive guys aren't the same, so they're going to figure out how they're going to balance that.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of question I have off of that, Luke, one of our listeners, was DMing me last night, Dustin, and said, in a way, do you feel like there's shooting troubles in the starting lineup potentially? I mean, Halliburton obviously is a great, great shooter, but, ideally you wouldn't have your best shooter be your point guard. And if you look at the other 4, Bruce Brown, Bennedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, Miles Turner, I mean, they all are, I think, decent shooters, but they're all 35% or lower in their career. So it's not like Buddy Hield, and granted, Buddy's one of the best NBA shooters of all time, but it's not like you really have a whole lot of consistent shooting, at least as of yet. Do you think that is a concern at all, or is the defense just such an issue over the past few years that needs to be the first focus?
I mean, the defense is the bigger issue. It could put you in a concern as far as shooting is concerned. But, I mean, in both cases, one of the ways to get a lot better is for Bennedict Mathurin to get a lot better in both of those areas. Obviously, he showed how good he is at getting to the rim and finishing through contact, how just tough of a competitor he is, how good of a scorer he can be. But you need him to make some outside shots, and you need him to defend people, and they absolutely believe that he can do both things. It is something those are 2 areas of his game that he's been working on for a long time. Going back to his days in the NBA Latin American Academy, they've been working on his shot and working on him playing defense and getting him to be better at both. And they could really use that. That's another a key piece, obviously, for the franchise in the long term, is they really need Mathurin to develop into that second All-Star caliber player. I mean, if this is going to be, in the distance, a team that can fight for the Eastern Conference title and get back in the finals for the first time in 20-something years, they really need Mathurin to be that guy. It was the first, top 9 pick in, 22 years or 23 years, I think, since '89. So that's the guy they expect. They've invested in and hope he develops into that. But he can probably do both of those things. I mean, he's got a good looking shot. He can make outside shots. And I mean, Bruce Brown was just saying, really the past 2 days, he looks at Mathurin. He sees a guy who can be a really good defender. And he was not a really good defender last year, but he's got the body, he's got the quickness, he's got the size, the strength, sort of everything you need. I mean, like he talks about being a Kobe Jordan type of two-way player, and you look at him and he's got that body. But there's also making that actually happen, and becoming something anywhere near that requires him to be a lot better than he was, to understand defense a lot better, to be honed in on defense a lot more. If he becomes that guy who can make a lot of shots from outside and can defend, then you've really raised your level, and you've also kind of changed your trajectory as a franchise as to how quick you're going to be moving up as a winner. But I think that's something they really need. Obviously, if they're not getting it, they might have to move Buddy back in the starting lineup. It's altogether possible if it's not coming from there. They might have to make that change, but they will. All of those guys can shoot, so there's going to be at least some gravity there. Nobody on that starting 5 is a bad shooter, but yes, you want there to be gravity created by guys to the 2, 3, and 4 spots. So you're opening up the middle of the floor, for that pick and roll basically to work better with Halliburton and Turner.
Dustin Dopirak joins us here, hanging out with you on the Fan on this Wednesday. He's on the Payless Liquors hotline and follows the Pacers for the Indianapolis Star. You mentioned Buddy Hield there. What is your read on the situation with him starting, coming off the bench, and obviously the potential of a trade and or contract extension? And then, I don't know, with Brown, Mathurin, Obi, Toppin, does it feel like, I guess, what percentage do you feel like you know what the starting lineup will be that first game against Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the starting lineup question. I mean, I don't fully know, but I mean, if I had to put money on it right now, and I don't and won't, you would think Halliburton, Brown, Mathurin, Toppin, Turner. That seems to sort of make sense on a bunch of levels. Obviously, Halliburton and Turner are sure things. They went out and paid Bruce Brown a lot of money to come in and play defense, so I would think for that reason he'll be in the starting five. And you got to have somebody on there that you really trust to guard somebody. I think they're really ready to push Mathurin into that role. Mathurin has to earn it. But I think, basically they view him as a really key piece of the future of the franchise. They believe that he has to make that step to take on starters' responsibilities, just because I think they view, as good as he was last year as a sixth man, there's some things you don't have to do when you're playing most of your minutes in second unit. You don't necessarily have to defend a star player. You're not being defended by a star player. No one's keying on you in the same way. They're using maybe your best second unit defender, but not your best first unit defender. So I mean, he's going to have to deal with guys who can really get up in there and in him and guard him. So I think they want to push him into that role. So I think and I do think they want to find out what Obi Toppin's got, and I think they're. Jarris Walker's obviously a rookie, so they're not going to push him to be the power forward. Jordan Nora, I think, is still part of that mix as well. So I'm going to be very interested to see what they do with him, because they really liked what they got out of him in the last 25 games last season. So I think, he's still, I think, an X factor in this discussion that we're not necessarily talking a lot about right now. But I think with Buddy, he's an interesting place. I mean, it sounds like basically from the reporting from Shams that he wasn't displeased with the offer, that he got from the Pacers. We're not sure about what that is yet, but I would have expected them to offer him about the same as what he was getting. I imagine he wanted to raise after having a really, really good shooting season. I think, though, that he's going to be locked in enough. It's going to be different if he is coming off the bench, and that's fewer minutes with Tyrese Halliburton, who I think helped make him a lot better last year. So I don't know if he's going to, maintain the same type of spirits he's got right now. I don't expect him to have the same kind of situation he had in Sacramento. I think that things have gotten really nasty there. Mm-hmm. I think he's got a lot of respect for Tyrese Halliburton. They're very close friends, so I think even coming off the bench, he's not going to ruin, Ty's franchise. And I think he's got a lot of respect for Rick Carlisle, too. I was sort of reminded, obviously, Rick, both of them spend their off seasons in Dallas. That's where Buddy's house is. That's where Rick lives in the off season. So they spend a lot of time together this off season. They've had a lot of discussions about his situation. I don't think he's going to sabotage Rick Carlisle's team either. So I think that he's going to be in a better place. I mean, they've loved him as a clubhouse guy. Again, he and Tyrese are really close. Everyone else just really gets a kick out of him. He's just an entertaining guy to be around. Just with his whole. You kind of have to know him. His whole personality is kind of like goofy, a little bit out there, but he fits with this group. So I think he's still going to be a productive guy, have a productive season. I'm sure he's going to try to go out in his walk year and make a bunch of money someplace. So whenever he is on the floor, he's going to keep trying to prove that he can be a really good shooter, that he's really well conditioned. He's got to get a little bit better on defense. So I think you're going to see some improvement there. Obviously, there's only so much of a ceiling. He's not going to come down and be, Drew Holiday or anything like that. But I mean, I think he can give them a little bit more on the defensive end, and ultimately look at the season as a way to go get himself paid, in the offseason. Basically, whether he gets traded or not at the deadline, I'm sure he's going to want to, put some numbers up. I don't think they'll move him before the deadline at this point. In the near future, unless something comes up. I mean, I'm sure that they had to explore the opportunity of getting Holiday when he was on the market, and I'm sure Hield would have been a part of that discussion. But I think at this point, I don't think there's anything necessarily on the table that it makes sense for them to go try and get that would be worth parting with a piece like Hield for. So I think you're more likely waiting to see what kicks up around the deadline, who's sort
right.
of
who's good and who's bad. Yeah, who's going forward and who's not.
Exactly. so I think that's the point where I think you'll see Buddy's name get raised again. When someone's established where they are, what teams are out of it and trying to blow it up, what teams need a shooter and are willing to part with really important assets for that. That's when I think they'll get back in the market for moving Buddy.
Dustin, we'll end with this. And again, Dustin Dopirak from the Indianapolis Star covers the Pacers. I don't know if you had PTSD yesterday when you saw the news come out, but this goes back to one of your older beats and certainly a story that I have a feeling you were chasing a little bit. You also saw many of these games when you were covering the Indiana Hoosiers. It's IU and Kentucky back on the schedule. We've got to wait till December 2025, but the 4-year series will be Rupp Arena in 2025, then Lucas Oil just after Christmas in 2026, Rupp again in 27, and Assembly Hall in 2028. Your thoughts on that announcement?
Yeah, I would say just kind of good for Mike Woodson. I think he that was a big piece of sort of what I guess kind of promises, that he made to IU. Promise maybe is a little bit strong, but he was clear that he wanted it back. It was a big deal to him to get that game, and it seemed like the last Huber Farms winery thing I covered, obviously they got that question every single year. IU, coaches who, whether it was going back to Tom Crean or whatnot, and that was such a big discussion point. I think, that was really a place where like Crean really skewered John Calipari over it. Going back to that, and Woodson came out and said, I want to get it done. He said that John didn't want to play it in Assembly Hall and was clear about that, but that Woodson really wanted to make it happen either way, that he was willing to go play a neutral site game in Indiana if it meant getting that series back on. And it just seemed like it was something he really wanted to accomplish as an alum, as somebody who felt like that series really mattered. So it's a significant feather in his cap, and I think you add that to him getting Kansas on the schedule. But I think he was just trying to make it a point to say that IU should be getting these games, that they should be going out and scheduling blue blood opponents, and the type of teams that everybody knows, and he was willing to make concessions to make it happen. Obviously, it says it plays everything on Calipari's terms as much as you possibly can. You get it at Rupp twice, only Assembly Hall once, and you play at Lucas Oil, which is a place he's wanted to play. For recruiting reasons, obviously, I have no idea how long Calipari's going to be there. I mean, it's I think a lot of people out there saying, well, that means he intends to be out by 2028.
It's exactly what it means, Dustin. That's exactly what I think. It's exactly what I think.
I'm presuming that. I think. Matt Jones, I know, tweeted this out yesterday, and you agree with this point. This game is a lot more important for Indiana than it is Kentucky. It's something that Indiana fans care about a lot more about getting on. It is their most hated non-conference arrival, but it's still cool as they play it, man. I mean, I think the watch out for everyone to say about how much it's been overblown in IU lore was probably the coolest event I've ever covered. Just the organicness of that moment and just what it was like in the narrative of where IU was at the time. And it's a big deal, and so I think it's a big deal for Woods to get it back on. I mean, I think there's just a lot of things he's done well. I think there's other things you could critique about, the way he stewarded his job so far. But I think that is a big deal. Saying, Indiana should be playing these type of games. Indiana should get involved in these types of series. And not doing it at neutral sites. Trying to get these games at Assembly Hall at least at some point, or at least get them in the state of Indiana, as opposed to playing all of them in neutral site tournaments. It's I think just it's an important thing that Mike Woodson can say he accomplished and got back to IU doing these type of games. And once you get that series started, you can keep it going, especially if Calipari does leave. I think there's some historical backing in keeping that thing around for whoever the next coach of Kentucky might be.
Again, we had a lot of that conversation to lead off today's show. You can check that out on our podcast. Again, Dustin Dopirak with us here. Payless Liquors Hotline covers the Pacers for the Indianapolis Star. Dustin, I know it's about to get pretty busy for you, so thanks for making time for us here on this Wednesday morning.
Anytime, fellas. Great to talk to you both. Thanks for having me.
That is Dustin Dopirak right there, Payless Liquors Hotline. Coming up next, Marc Ross, former NFL executive scout. How would he be handling this Jonathan Taylor situation? He actually was a finalist for the Colts general manager opening back about a decade ago, so we can bring that up with him as well. He joins us on the other side.
O'Reilly.
the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, 9 o'clock hour hanging out with you. Wake Up Call, KB and Andy on this Wednesday, getting you ready for the Colts and Titans. Reminder, all that pregame coverage on Sunday, beginning with JMV and Company at 9 a.m. The call of the game with Mayte. He'll have you there for the call of the Colts and Titans, and then Greg Rakes for all of the postgame coverage as we find out if the Colts above 500, 3-2, or if they'll lose 2 straight, and then we'll have to see what will happen with everything going on there. Jonathan Taylor news, obviously, we've been talking about that and much more. Let's go back. Busy morning for us here, KB. Let's go back to the Payless Liquors hotline. A guy that I love, former New York Giant. That's why Marc Ross joins us with the NFL Network analyst there. Mark, good morning. How are you, sir?
Outstanding. How about you guys?
Man, we are fantastic. Living the life here in Indianapolis, getting ready for week 5 of the NFL season. I want to ask some general things, what you think of the first month or so of the season, but local here, obviously the news this week, Jonathan Taylor can practice. So we'll see what happens, a walkthrough today, and then back at practice for the Colts tomorrow. You've been in these types of discussions, kind of a battle with the player, an unhappy contract situation. What do you make of the Colts and Jonathan Taylor, that situation, and what types of things do you think are happening behind the scenes?
Well, you're just weighing, the good, the bad, the positives, the negatives. You really have people that are trying to keep, the business sense of it, the dollars and cents together. You got some people getting emotionally involved with, Jonathan Taylor as a person, that kind of gets involved. So all of that's going on. Your cap guy's got his opinion, your GM, your scouts, your personnel people, the owner gets involved. We know some owners are more involved than others. So, all of that comes into play when you're dealing with a contract like this, a person like this, someone of the stature of Jonathan Taylor. And, of course, now with all the changing of the guard with the running back contract and the running back's values over the past few years, you're taking that all into account. You're sitting there looking at, Saquon Barkley sitting there on the bench there in New York, speaking of the Giants. And, man, let's see how they maybe follow that lead and not pay these guys. So, it's really just you just have to dig in and look at what's best for the organization. And even you're looking at how you're playing in these first 4 games without Jonathan Taylor. You'll talk about that. Well, okay, this is how we look. How much better will he make us? Will he make us better? So it's really just you dig deep into everything in every possible situation and scenario and what's best for the organization going forward. Those are the best teams that make the decisions that are best for the organization, not an individual player or one individual opinion for the organization.
Mark, we saw it back obviously late in training camp when Jonathan Taylor was seeking a trade, and the Colts granted him that ability to try and see what was out there. What do you think a realistic trade package would be for Jonathan Taylor? I know the trade deadline is, a month away, a little bit less than a month away. But when you factor in compensation, not only financially for a new contract and draft picks, assuming that's what it would be, what do you think would be a compensation for him?
Well, it's so uncertain now because of the running back valuation nowadays. And what's realistic now for running back, most teams now, all the other 31 say, well, we'll give you a 4th or 5th or something. And, of course, the Colts, even though they're saying they highly value the guy, and then someone gives a package like, well, actually, that's not good enough. We don't want him, but that's not good enough. So, it's all the other kind of positions at this point, you can kind of point to, okay, here's the precedent. This is what's next. Here's what it'll take. But with the running backs and the devaluation, it's just been like shocking almost that they're worth nothing. So, I mean, if you're the Colts, you're looking at it, you might just say, well, let's just take anything we can get, a couple, a second or third or third and fourth, just, throw some incentives in there with it. To make sure you get something. But those are the decisions you're making now to say, okay, how much do we actually value this guy? What do we think is going to be the end outcome of our negotiations with him? And then what do we feel comfortable going forward with to say, all right, are we better parting ways with him and getting anything, getting something, or just moving on from him and sticking it out?
Or how surprised are you being in the NFL and following the NFL that the running back position is being valued or not being valued? And then as it pertains to the Jonathan Taylor situation, Mark, you have an agent who is very involved and is very involved on social media. How does that change things as well?
Well, agents, they got to do their thing. They got to do their job, and you can't disparage them on that. And that's why players have agents. You sit there and yell at each other. Your cat guy, your GM yell at each other. Okay, next day it's another business day. Let's try to do business. So now with the social media age, that throws the whole thing in the state of flux as well and adds another layer of animosity, let's just say. But you still have to do business and, approach it in that sort of way that these are business negotiations and it doesn't get personal. But as far as the value of running backs, when I came to the league, it's, you built your team around running backs. Of course, quarterbacks were super important. They were right neck and neck, but almost neck and neck. And you could kind of see it coming because of, how colleges played. And the NFL just started slowly adopting college ways. And when I started in the first 10, 15 years, whatever, it's like, that won't work in the NFL. That's college stuff. And now it's, the colleges have taken over. And what they've done, they've been the innovative people where the NFL had to adapt to what they were doing. And part of that was when you used to watch colleges and spread out and throw the ball all over the place, didn't matter who your running back was. So, and you're seeing that now where the great teams, the Super Bowl teams, have proven they can win without top-tier running backs. And the highly paid running backs, the highly drafted running backs really didn't have a ton of success and got hurt a lot. So it was not surprising if you kind of looked at it in each step of the way. I didn't think it would get this bad, but you could kind of see the devaluation kind of coming.
He's Marc Ross, former NFL executive. You see him on NFL Network. He's with us here right now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Marcus, we sit here at, I guess, the first quarter of the season complete. You've got 4 2-2 teams in the AFC South. Who would you view as the favorite in this division after what you've seen through the first 4 weeks?
Yeah, wow, it's an intriguing. They're going into like, oh, those teams, none of them are any good. Jacksonville's going to run away with it. Forget about Houston. Forget about the Titans are not good anymore. But it really has become intriguing at this point, and they're all different. They're all completely different with how they're built and how they're structured and what the goals were kind of coming into the season. And with Indy, it was we'll just learn and grow and let Anthony Richardson get better. And now you're in every game and you're competitive, even when he didn't play. So I would think despite their struggles early, that Jacksonville sort of is still the favorite, just because they've been there, they've done that. They should be taking another step. They've got the veteran head coach, Super Bowl pedigree. They've got Trevor, who they won the game last year. So at this point, I would still slightly favor them, but it's been far more intriguing, and those teams have been far more competitive than I would have thought coming into the season.
I mean, the thing about it is that you can't have all these teams 8-8, given that we play 17 games now, Mark. I always want to say that, well, everyone's going to be 8-8, but you can't be that anymore.
8-1, maybe.
Yeah,
Would that define the AFC South?
Really
Everyone finishes the year 8-1.
Everyone gets a tie at some point. Marc Ross with us here on The Fan on this Wednesday, Payless Liquors hotline. You mentioned Anthony Richardson, so you have AR and Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, and I didn't think too much of Stroud, and he's been pretty damn good in this first month. Anthony Richardson definitely showing some flashes, a little bit of an injury issue. Same with Bryce Young, the injuries, although he looks a little bit more lost than the others, but these quarterbacks are going to be all tied at the hip, taken so high. What do you make of all three of them and how they're playing?
Well, it'll be fun for the league, right? I mean, their whole career, they'll, as you said, they'll be tied to each other, they'll be compared to each other, and it'll be how they play individually and how their teams do. So that'll be really fun to look at. And I've talked about different situations, and they're all in different situations. Coming into it, I thought Bryce Young was ready-made. Throw him in there. They got the excellent coaching staff. They had some talent around him. I thought that talent has proved to be, maybe not as good as people thought coming into there, and he's had struggles, and it was almost as if they thought, let's just put everything on this guy, and you go do it, Bryce. And they got to figure out, no, you can't just throw the guy just because you know one pick in the draft. That you got to throw everything on him. You got to help him some, and I think they should learn from that. With C.J. Stroud, I mean, he's completely blown me away. And I covered the Texans during training camp, and even then it didn't look like he would be ready-made to go, even though they said he's going to be the guy. I thought they were going to have a lot of growing pains there, but man, DeMeco Ryans, the head coach, has really stepped in and got that team buying in. They play hard, they play fast on offense. C.J.'s been poised. Hasn't turned the ball over, been really productive. So he's far and away exceeded my expectations right now. And then with AR there, you guys see it. You see the great and you see the not so great. Now you see why he was so polarizing coming out, because you get the best of both. And the NFL and great quarterbacks is all about consistency. And do you consistently do great things well, or do you consistently do mediocre things, or consistently do bad things? So we'll have to see where his career this season, each game plays out for him, where he goes with the consistency aspect, because he's never been consistently doing good things or bad things.
Right.
It's always been one or the other, almost extremes with him, where he'll throw a ball and you're like, what in the world is going on? And then he makes a spectacular play like he does, running around and throwing it. So where will that consistency go to with Anthony Richardson? And that'll tell the tale of his career and the Indy's seasons and future.
Mark, we'll end with this. And again, thank you for the time here. Marc Ross is with us, former NFL executive. You can see him on NFL Network. But I seem to recall back in the 2011, 2012, I guess, GM cycle that you were a hot name here in Indy. It was a job that eventually went to Ryan Grigson. What do you remember about that process? And did you think you had a legit shot at taking over for Bill Polian?
Yeah, I did. And, yes, I was a hot guy then. We were winning 2 Super Bowls there with the Giants with our crew. And, I did think I really had a good shot. Met with the owner there, Irsay, and a couple other guys, the executives there, and gave it my all, gave it my best. And I thought I presented really well. But, obviously Ryan Grigson was a much more qualified and a better candidate than me. It would have been an awesome job, because that's when they had the Andrew Luck draft. So, that's history. It's done with. I've moved on. Had an excellent career, and maybe one day get back there with in Indy.
What is a Jim Irsay interview experience like there? I'm trying to think.
Can't talk about that on air, guys. Next time I'm there, I'm back there for the combine. We'll have them take me out for some beers, and we'll give a little chat.
You do not have to tell us twice. I have a feeling it might need a few drinks to get through that entire.
We're going top shelf for that, not beers. We need a little Louis the 13th or something.
I love it. We'll get the NFL Network black card on that one there. Again, Marc Ross from the NFL Network with us here. Mark, great stuff.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you for the time this morning.
All right. Take care.
That is Marc Ross. I seem to recall, and I could be wrong on this, Andy, so I apologize for trying to go off the top of my head here, but I seem to recall Grigson, Marc Ross, and boy, there was one other name, but I was actually told the night before that they eventually hired Grigson permanently. These are the 3 people it could be.
Okay.
One of these 3.
See, I'll Google that for you.
I wonder who that third name was. Give me the write-up on these 3.
Okay.
And then tomorrow it'll be announced, who exactly that person is, and it ended up being Ryan Grigson. But yeah, Marc Ross was, whatever. Was he second in line with the Giants? You would probably know that answer.
No, he was second in line. He was seen as very much a rising star. He made my 20s a lot better. My 30s have not been great, but my 20s were better, and Marc Ross played a part in that. So there you go. I'll thank him after he's off the air. Thank you.
I enjoyed the conversation with him.
Yeah.
But then, if you fast forward then to the coaching cycle, you know who the runner-up to Chuck Pagano was.
Oh, man.
So Ryan Grigson hired.
Okay.
And then Chuck really came out of nowhere, because if you remember, that Baltimore team, that was the year that who was the Baltimore kicker that missed the chip shot field goal in New England to try and send them to the Super Bowl? Wouldn't have been Justin Tucker. It would have been right before that. But Chuck was not a candidate at all. Then all of a sudden, they get on that run, and he's viewed as kind of the next Baltimore defensive coordinator. But the runner-up, you've got to go to Mark Dykton's Bears.
Okay, well, who was it? Mark, do you remember?
I'm scared to say.
I'm also scared to say.
Matt Nagy?
Marc Trestman.
Oh yeah, I had a buddy who thought Trestman was going to be the truth.
Trestman.
Oh yeah, people love Trestman. That was a great hire, Mark.
They love him
outside the box.
They love him for one season, and then his teams take a dump, and they're terrible.
He's in the CFL. Didn't he win the championship with the Argonauts or something like that?
You should do yourself a favor and Wikipedia Marc Trestman and just see how many teams he's been at, and it is.
I'm doing it right now.
It is wild.
I'm doing it. Okay, it is. Okay, hang on. It is wild. Can I read these to you?
Go ahead.
He was with the U, the Minnesota Vikings, the Bucks, the Browns, back to Minnesota, the Niners, the Lions, the Cardinals, the Raiders, back to the Dolphins, NC State. He was the OC there for a year, then back in the NFL to the Saints, and then is the Montreal Alouettes. He was the head coach for 4 years, then the Bears, then the Ravens as the OC, then the Argonauts. I was right with that one, and now he's with the Tampa Bay Vipers. He's the head coach and general manager for the Tampa Bay Vipers. 3-time Grey Cup winner, 2-time CFL Coach of the Year. There you go.
Chicago
Marc
Bear
Trestman.
legend.
Oh, yeah.
Marc Trestman.
Put him in the Ring of Honor if they had one.
I know you were thinking, Andy, about tossing a Shaquille Leonard question Mark's way. And I asked that to Stephen Holder when we had him on earlier. And, again, through 4 games, I think the thing that stands out to me, and maybe there's some Gus Bradley audio because I know he got that question yesterday that we can play. But I thought the thing that has stood out to me is through 4 games, this guy's played about 200 snaps. Yes, his snap count is dwindling, but to me what stands out to me more than his play time slowly decreasing is the fact that, Andy, I can maybe recall one play Leonard has made. And that is not Leonard. That's not been his game at all. If anything, it's the opposite. He's been a guy that, if you really locked in for 60 snaps, you might see like a handful or 10 or 12 that are like, oh man, it's not great. But then he also has some big-time splash. He's got a huge takeaway. He's got timely turnovers, those sorts of things. And I just don't recall him even really being around the ball for those opportunities. Like, obviously, E.J. Speed had a dumb penalty on Sunday, Andy. But I also feel like E.J. Speed's made a half dozen plays that I remember. Zaire Franklin
100%.
has made, obviously,
absolutely Franklin, yeah.
a ton of plays. And I guess that would be my concern. Again, Gus Bradley said yesterday, we're going to – November is what we're shooting for Leonard to be fully back. I mean, right now, it's 4 games. There's 13 left on the schedule. But if you were going to say, Kevin Bowen, right now, tell me what you would do with Leonard at the end of this season, you would have to look long and hard at a full restructure of that contract or even cut him.
Here's what Gus Bradley had to say yesterday, that very thing about getting Leonard back into shape here.
When we sat down and looked at it, we just felt like we're going to have a plan in mind and kind of follow that plan. There may be more, there may be less reps, but it's based on how we're going to bring him back. And really the ideal thing is, in my mind, is to get him back, sometime November, to where we really have a good feel for where he's at.
Again, we're still early on this, but you can't ignore that E.J. Speed is slowly increasing in playing time. Gus kind of pointed to yesterday, well, that was more of a, personnel grouping situation, this and that. Okay, whatever. Let's put that to the side. If we just talk about the Leonard we've seen on the field, and in 200 snaps, Andy, again, I just don't see him around the ball like his usual self, or I can't recall many plays that he's made. And if I compare him to the other linebackers, those dudes are making plays.
Well, I mean, you said that he would make up for stuff by having those boom plays.
That is his game.
Yeah, that's his game. And it reminds me of Anthony Richardson. Like, you're going to have some incompletions.
Sure.
The completion percentage from the pocket may not be as
he's
good.
He's not going to fit every run lane out there.
Yeah, but you know what's great? He's going to make boom plays where it's like, damn, that guy's got it, right? And that has been on the defensive side. That had been Leonard. I come at this from having zero emotion involved in the past with Shaq. I mean, that's me. So I come at it from looking at what he's giving, what he could give in that contract, and there's no way they can go into 2024 with him having a cap hit of over $20 million. There's no way if
you're going to dig this line in for Jonathan Taylor, exactly. How can you do the opposite with Shaquille Leonard?
They're going to have other decisions. Michael Pittman at the end of the season, there are going to be decisions on this roster, and if you are a rebuilding team, if you are a retooling team, whatever verbiage you want to use, having Leonard make more than $20 million is not it. We have said consistently after this season they have an out. I mean, they do. They have an out. It would be about $8 million in dead cap money. That is what you have to deal with when you give contracts that do not work out in the NFL. You have to absorb some of that dead money. I mean, the game on Sunday against the Rams, I remember the TV, because Leonard was on the bench, just standing there, standing, I guess not technically on the bench. That's the only time I remember him being shown on TV, that play.
Andy, he was announced last in defensive, player introductions. It's either offense gets announced or defense gets announced, and he was announced as the final guy. And I'm thinking to myself, if we were being honest with ourselves, I could think of about a half dozen Colts on the defense, if not more.
Starting with Franklin, Buckner, any of those
should
guys.
be announced last, quote unquote. And I feel bad. Leonard's been through physical football hell, really, with back surgeries and nerve issues and all of that. But you got to call it like you see it. And to me, this is the reality so far. 4 games. We'll see. Gus Bradley points to November, but right now you just have not seen his normal self. The Colts did make a somewhat interesting roster move yesterday. So Dallas Flowers is now an injured reserve. That opened up a spot on their 53-man roster. They promoted Amari Rodgers up from the practice squad. Amari Rodgers actually played on Sunday, a former third-round pick. He has some return experience in his NFL career. So, Dallas Flowers was also your kick returner. So maybe that's where he could play into it. But I do think it's worth pointing out, Amari Rodgers is kind of similar to Isaiah McKenzie. So I'm curious, at some point, does that, is there 2 similar guys on the roster? Rodgers did play a couple of snaps on Sunday.
McKenzie hasn't done anything. I mean, he had a nice little juke move on Sunday, but does he have two catches on the year, something like that?
Richardson threw a little ball behind him on one of the first plays of the game, but he has done very little. He is your punt returner right now. The Colts did bring a cornerback back to their practice squad, Darren Hall, who has started some games in Atlanta. So if you're looking for the replacement for Dallas Flowers, again, Kenny Moore doesn't come off the field. Juju Brents now falls into the category of he doesn't come off the field. That third corner who plays a lot, right now, I think it'll either be 7th-round pick Jalen Jones or Darrell Baker Jr., who we saw benched after week 2.
You want Paris Campbell back? All the Giants do is they throw 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He gets a yard and a half.
4 catches for
9 yards.
6 yards the other week.
They use him more than they use Darren Waller, though.
You say that as a disgruntled fantasy football.
Yeah, you're damn right.
Yeah.
I found the list of Colts GM candidates back when Marc Ross and Ryan Grigson interviewed.
Who was the third one?
Okay, so I don't know if it was down to 3. These are the 7 that apparently Jim Irsay confirmed back in the day. Montreal Alouettes GM Jim Pop, Tom Siskowski of the Dallas, Les Snead, David Campbell, Marc Ross, Ryan Grigson, and Director of Player Personnel Tom Telesco. Do any of those ring a bell?
Was it Telesco?
Telesco was kind of the second in charge with Polian. What was the Campbell name?
David Campbell of Atlanta. Or I'm sorry, David Caldwell. David Caldwell.
I think it was
apologies.
I think it was Caldwell, because Caldwell, I think, had some Polian history as well. But Grigson and Ross, obviously Grigson was the one that eventually got that gig. So
you think he meant that we would go out for a drink and we would get top shelf?
I felt like there was some seriousness to it.
Okay, yeah.
Some Pappy Van Winkle.
Can you imagine what an interview process with Jim Irsay is like?
Do you have to do it on the bus, or do you go to the boardroom, or is it in his spacious office, or what is it?
I still can't believe the whole bus thing at training camp. Think about that. You show up to training camp, park your bus 20 yards north of the end zone in some dude's backyard to tell Jonathan Taylor we're not giving you a contract extension.
Does he pay the guy?
In front of 7,000 people.
Does he pay the guy to park the bus there? I wondered those things. Because those people have horse farms and cow farms and everything else out there.
Here's 2 extra tickets to the season opener.
I want the cash. I don't want season. I don't want a couple
100.
tickets.
The autographed 100, please.
Colts walkthrough coming up a little bit later today. Again, no practice to start this week. A little bit banged up, it sounds like, coming off of back-to-back overtime games. That is part of the reason why. A look ahead to Sunday with Tennessee. Currently, the Colts slight favorite, maybe a pick'em game if you want to look at it from that end. Tennessee has been, to sum it up very succinctly, awful on the road, good to great at home. They averaged 27 points per game at home. They average 9 points per game on the road. Andy, all 6 touchdowns the Titans have scored this year at home.
They've had a close win, a close loss, a blowout win, and a blowout loss. To me, this is one of those where, and I know we need to take a break. We'll get to a check down here in a second. Like Matthew Stafford, I have respect for, and Matthew Stafford, won a Super Bowl, and Ryan Tannehill is washed, man. I mean,
I've always been a fan of Mrs. Tannehill.
Yes.
He was a wide receiver, right, in college?
Wide receiver at A&M,
yeah,
correct.
That's what I thought. I guess I need to look up Mrs. Tannehill.
She was featured when when he was on the Dolphins and they did Hard Knocks back in the day.
Yeah, I remember that.
So does that mean we might get on Sunday?
Oh, the Mayo plop.
Yeah, is he even on the? Is Will Levis even around?
Is he inactive?
I asked that. Is he even active on any of these?
I don't know. Do we have to do coffee and mayo?
Malik
Does
Willis.
Andy need to take the dive?
Malik Willis is the backup, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he had injuries, did Levis, and then, he also stunk it up in the preseason. If you just Google Levis, the first things that pop up, Will Levis girlfriend, Will Levis NFL draft, Will Levis sister. Two of those things I follow on Instagram. I'll let you guys work out which ones. Which one. Come on, Ryan Tannehill. Dude threw for 100 yards against the Browns. He's got 2 games under 200 yards. Ugh.
Titans are in such an awkward stage of are they,
Are you good or are you not good?
Or are you rebuilding or are you not?
What are you doing?
Why do you have Henry? Shouldn't you trade him?
They might not have him much longer. Yeah, he's got 2.
And you got DeAndre Hopkins, too. So
and their defense is kind of older.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Titans continue to do this every year, and then they just show up.
Then
and
they'll win
the
AFC South.
They beat the Colts, and they win 9 or 10 games. That's kind of been the story with Mike Vrabel. All right, pop quiz coming up in a few. 317-239-1070. We have some Jeff Saturday audio. I think one of the first times he's really been asked somewhat publicly about the interim gig he had last year. He was on PTI with Tony Kornheiser, Mike Wilbon. So we'll play that. Coming up here in a little. Before all of that, let's go to a morning checkdown.
75 years old.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, some of the big news around here. College basketball yesterday finally became official. Indiana and Kentucky renewing that series after, 15 years or so. A bunch of whining and crying between the teams. Calipari didn't want to go to Assembly Hall and everything else. I think we talked about in the 7 o'clock hour. I think Kentucky got the best of this. 2 games coming up at Rupp, one at Lucas Oil, and then the final one there at Assembly Hall. The festivities begin in 2025 there in Rupp, and then Lucas Oil for 26 and 27. It goes back to Rupp Arena, and then 28 finally at Assembly Hall. Who knows what the hell all of us are going to be doing in 2028? Who knows what who the coaches are going to be for the respective programs?
So John Calipari would be 69 years old. Mike Woodson would be 70. Will they both be on the sideline?
Well, okay, so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Both of them will not be. Woodson because of age, and Calipari,
Rick Pitino will be coaching Kentucky, and Brad Stevens will be coaching IU in those 2 games.
I'd love that. Well, how old would Pitino be? Pitino's 70 right now, isn't he?
Pitino's never dying.
Well, he's a vampire. He's actually 718 years old. You had no idea.
Mike Woodson will come out just so they can get him on the microphone saying,
Let's kick some ass.
And then he can go back to the seats.
They wanted Calipari fired, but he literally has a lifetime deal that if they got rid of him, KB, he would get all of the money. They just have to give him all of the money. There's no buyout. It goes down in 2 years.
I could use one of those contracts.
Well, you're damn right.
John Calipari presents University of Kentucky. That's what it'd have to say because you just own them.
Major League Baseball. We had 4 games yesterday in the wild card round. I had no idea until yesterday that the Twins hadn't won a playoff game in 18 straight appearances. I guess in a way that means they've made the playoffs a decent amount, I should say.
They ran into Jimmy Cook's Yankees a lot. When the Yankees were good, they made the playoffs and they lose.
You can't win one of them?
Listen, brother, I'm with you. 18 straight's ridiculous.
They beat the Blue Jays, so that losing streak is over. It was the longest in, I think, North American professional sports, if I saw that correct. Yesterday, Rangers beat the Rays, so those are the series in the AL. The Twins and the Rangers going for the clinch today. In the NL, it was Arizona on the road. They got down 3-0, came back to win 6-3. They beat the Milwaukee Brewers and the Phillies over the Marlins in the nightcap. So again, Phillies, Diamondbacks, Rangers, Twins. Those 4 teams in these best-of-3 series, they have a chance to win those series today.
The problem with the Twins is they get fat and happy being in the AL Central. So they play all these lowly teams, and they're like, oh, wait, we have to play real competition now that the postseason started. That's what happens there.
See, I feel that way about Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's been so great in the regular season. They've got to the postseason.
I thought the AL East was good.
It is, well, it
normally is good.
Money doesn't always mean that you're good.
Orioles and Rays. I mean, who would have thought that at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, absolutely crazy. All right, looking ahead to Week 5 in the NFL. Again, Colts and Titans Sunday at 1 o'clock. Other games of note. You've got a great one Sunday Night Football. That will be the Cowboys and the 49ers. So that has been a recent playoff matchup. That's going to be, again, Sunday Night Football. Other games of note, Eagles at Rams, I think is intriguing. Ravens and Steelers. And I think the London game is a nice one. That'll be Jacksonville and Buffalo.
No Toy Story game for that one, I don't
By the way, that had the largest ESPN Plus numbers that anything has had on ESPN Plus.
I saw some clips from it. That was really well done. I mean, obviously, you're catering to kids.
Yeah,
no,
but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Whatever.
They were entertained. My daughter sat through an entire football game and didn't complain once.
I can't believe that. See, Mark Dykton is absolutely the viewer that they're wanting to get all the information from.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy. By the way, the toilet bowl this week, Jets and Broncos. I love these toilet bowl games. I absolutely adore them.
Broncos are 1.5-point favorites. I don't know. Russell Wilson against that Jets defense.
We never talked about Sean Payton cutting off his sweatshirt like Belichick.
That didn't work, did it?
Well, no, it did work. They scored like 21 unanswered, and they won the game after that, I think. That's all it took.
College football games of note. We've got Notre Dame at Louisville Saturday night. You're taking Louisville, it sounds like?
Oh, man. Listen, this is going to go to Friday. I want Notre Dame to win this game so damn bad. I don't know why I'm worried about it. Notre Dame's been through a couple tough weeks. I mean, they have, right? I'm not wrong with that.
No,
I mean, it's been a
brutal.
very busy part.
Hell, they've got USC next week.
Could Louisville just catch them in this powder keg of huge game offense? I just don't trust Plummer at all for U of L. I don't know. Last time, what's your quarterback's name?
Sam Hartman.
Last time Hartman was there, literally played the worst half I've ever seen a quarterback play. And that was with lesser talent at Wake Forest, but he was bad. Man, this is a tough game for me. I'm probably going to go Notre Dame, but if Louisville won the game, I guess I wouldn't be surprised.
Purdue and Iowa. That's a 3:30 kick. Again, Iowa's starting quarterback Cade McNamara sounds like done for the year. So that's a good news on the Purdue front in terms of their opposition coming up on Sunday. All right, pop quiz Saturday. Pop quiz is next. 317-239-1070. We'll do that on the
The Fan. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
I can't remember the gentleman's name. Was it Jack yesterday who got 4 out of 5? KB, do you remember?
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, he got question 3 wrong, but he was a rock star, man.
You know, and there are some baseball questions here. At least they all are in our lifetime.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, yes.
Which is not usually the case.
They're in our dad's lifetimes, too, which is nice.
I have to go, like, on the Bowen family tree to, like, great-grandpas at times to be like, well, I never met him. Wonder if he would know the answer to the 1898 Warren Spahn's stepfather's niece who threw out the first pitch at, you know, Waverly Field or something
Whatever.
like that.
Plus, you have a 50-50 question in here, so these are absolutely doable.
It is doable, yeah.
Yeah. You'll get some of these. Reminder, Jeff's Saturday sound will come up after the pop quiz. We'll do that as well.
Give us a number 1 through 8.
I'm gonna go with let's go with 2 on this one. We always do a bigger number. Let's go with 2.
Don,
good morning.
Good morning, fellas. I've got to say, Andy.
Have we had Don on before?
Oh, trust me, we have.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm wondering
on the radio.
Okay, but I'm wondering if he's the only one that has done that with me, or
Matt
is there
Taylor.
somebody
Didn't
else?
Matt Taylor try to do it on Friday with you?
Matt Taylor, who is older than Don, actually. Yeah. Don, how old are you?
I'm 67.
Yeah.
Nice.
Matt Taylor's 77, so there you go.
77, yeah.
Don, always enjoy hearing your
right,
voice.
Don.
Happy Wednesday to you. I'm going to throw number 1 at you right now, all right?
All righty.
Purdue heads to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes on Saturday. Who leads the all-time series in football? Is it the Boilers or Hawkeyes?
Oh, boy. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes.
You sure?
No, Purdue.
You going Purdue? Okay, I like it. Thank you, Don.
Good job, Don. All right, question number 2. Zach Wheeler threw 6 2/3 innings of 5-hit, 1-run baseball as the Phillies beat the Marlins in Game 1 of their series last night. Wheeler has 3 games allowing 1 or fewer runs over 6+ innings in his Phillies postseason career. That's the 3rd most in franchise history. Hall of Famer Steve Carlton is one of the Phillies with more such starts. Who is the other, okay? Is it Roy Halladay, Curt Schilling, Cole Hamels, or Grover Cleveland Alexander?
Sounds like a presidential candidate
it
from
does.
1850s.
What team was it again?
The Phillies. So Zach Wheeler last night was fantastic. Again, 6 2/3 of 5-hit, 1-run baseball. It's him. It's Steve Carlton. They've done it. Who else? Halladay, Schilling, Hamels, or Alexander?
Oh, God. Halladay.
Don, what part of town do you live on?
I live out northeast. I'm in the car right now. That's why it's bouncing around.
Oh, you're good. Sounding great. Number 3 here, Royce Lewis. That would be a Twins DH. Became just the 3rd player in MLB history to hit home runs in his first 2 career postseason plate appearances when he went deep twice against the Blue Jays yesterday. The first player to do it was former Twin Gary Gaetti. The second player to do it is still active. Don, is it Kyle Schwarber, Christian Yelich, Matt Olson, or Eva Longoria?
Evan Longoria.
Evan.
Yeah, I like Eva better. Are you going with Evan?
Somebody said Evan, so I'm going with it.
All right. Smart choice.
Was it? It was Eva Longoria, right?
Yeah.
She was dating Tony Parker,
right? Yeah.
What's she up to these days?
Eva Longoria, she could be active.
Yeah, she could be active, certainly. Yep.
There you go.
I hear you, Don. Careful at the wheel right now.
All right, yeah, be careful, Don. You're driving. Question number 4. On this day in 2001, Barry Bonds hit his 70th home run of the season, tying Mark McGwire's MLB record. Bonds would break the record the next day. Who gave up Bonds' record-breaking 71st home run? Was it Chuck McElroy, Dennis Springer, Chan-Ho Park, or Wilfredo Rodriguez?
Jeez.
I didn't know this one. I got to be honest, and I should.
Well, I'll go with Park. I don't have any idea.
Look at that. Don.
Go
All
with who
right,
you know.
Number 5. Don, congrats to Aaliyah Boston. That would be the unanimous Rookie of the Year in the WNBA of the Indiana Fever. Name the only player in WNBA history to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. Married to Sheldon Williams? Am I imagining things, Scotty?
I think you're right, yes.
Is it A, Candace Parker, B, Tamika Catchings, C, Lisa Leslie, or D, Cynthia Cooper? They've had her doing some NCAA tournament stuff, CBS, the Turner in-studio stuff as well here in recent years. Parker, Catchings, Leslie, or Cooper?
Leslie. Although Candace Parker is smoking.
Hey, okay. Do you want to change your answer to smoking Parker in your words, or stick with Leslie?
I think I got to go with Parker.
Tell you what here.
Candace Parker no longer with Sheldon Williams.
2016 they split up.
She's married to...
Sorry, I'm not up to date on that.
She's married to Anna Petrakova.
Oh. So does that mean she went other side of the plate, if I follow that correctly?
She traded teams, I think.
Okay. All right there. Well, congrats to Candace on that. Boy, Don went with his gut feel and some other body parts, and that led to a couple of correct answers, honestly. When you
It doesn't matter how you get there.
You don't need to show your work. Just, yes, what's it look like at the end? Purdue was correct.
I could go a couple of different ways.
What a Candace Parker surprise. What a surprise.
Evan Longoria. Yes! Was correct. Chanho Park, I guess that was the one where he really just kind of was grasping there. The only one he missed was number 2. He said Halliday, right?
Yeah, it was Cole Hamels was the other Phillies pitcher who had went at least 6 2/3.
Don, drive safe. Maybe call your doctor, too.
Hands at 10 and 2 after that one.
Man. Impressive there from Don. We'll play some Jeff Saturday.
The internet people are going to be like, Andy Sweeney and Mark Dykton are logged in. They're Googling a lot of Candace Parker in the 9 o'clock hour. What the hell were they talking about? It's cold season, damn it.
Research. What do you want?
Yeah, pop quiz leads you down. Crazy pass. We'll play some Jeff Saturday audio to round it out.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, final segment of the show. Good pop quiz. Busy show today. Appreciate Stephen Holder of ESPN following the Colts. Joining us, Dustin Dopirak, IndyStar with the Pacers, and Marc Ross, NFL Network, breaking down some Colts, some AFC South, and much more. All of that and all of our nonsense, our thoughts on the Indiana-Kentucky basketball series back. All of that up at the Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com. Check it out, Apple Podcasts, wherever you Android guys get your podcasts from. I don't know. Who's an Android guy in the office? I have no idea. Is anyone an Android guy? I don't think so, right? Jake's not. Todd's not.
I don't want to be in a group text with him.
Is Jimmy Cook? I don't think he is.
One of our producers is.
Oh, is he?
Oh, yeah, James is.
I think James is, yeah, actually. Because I think I looked down on him thinking, oh, really? The green? This is not blue? What are we doing here? Anyway, before we get to this Jeff Saturday sound, and we'll do it, he was on PTI yesterday. Have you seen the odds for NFL MVP? They update every single week. Have you seen this? Just throwing it out there.
I assume that Tua is the heavy favorite.
Well, he was, but not after they got smoked.
Josh Allen, now the new favorite.
Josh Allen at plus 350 to win NFL MVP. Tied for second, Tua and Pat Mahomes. Fourth, Jalen Hurts. Fifth, Lamar Jackson at plus 1,200. Justin Herbert plus 1,600, tied with Brock Purdy. And that to me, just quickly, ridiculous. All quarterbacks. You can't throw Christian McCaffrey in there.
How about Puka
somewhere.
Nacua?
How about Puka? But you can't throw McCaffrey in there. What's he have? 8 touchdowns in 4 games. I mean, easily the best weapon in the NFL.
Did Derrick Henry win MVP, or do you have to go back to Adrian Peterson?
Boy, I feel like I should know that. Scotty, do you know that? Yeah, I think he did. But, I mean, listen, I'm fine with Josh Allen and Tua, but Pat Mahomes has not had the start to the season to be second in odds.
A couple
and Jalen Hurts
ago,
hasn't either.
A couple years ago, we were trying to make that case for Jonathan Taylor, honestly, to get some MVP consideration that year that he carried the Colts to the brink of a playoff berth until Carson Wentz and company pissed down their legs.
We do have some breaking NFL news. The Patriots have traded for Chargers cornerback J.C. Jackson. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Boy, that'll resurrect the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if defense is their issue right now.
Jeff Saturday, as Mark said, he appeared on PTI yesterday, and that was with obviously Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. Really, I can't recall many other times he's been asked about the Colts gig. Here was Jeff Saturday yesterday.
So we will get you out of here on this. It's the question you anticipated. It's the question that everybody wants. They asked someone who was a head coach for 8 or 9 games. You left broadcasting last year to coach the Colts, your old team. What do you know now that you wish you had known then when you took the job?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, I love the experience. Very few people, it's never happened. So, no one has had it. It's an incredible experience. The ability to turn around or make big shifts in the middle of a season, I didn't realize it would be as much as it was, right? And so when you think about, they had basically 9 months from February of that year until November, they had put all kinds of things in. So when you go in to make change, you're trying to build relationships with a staff, with players, kind of all on the fly. And as you're playing these games, you basically get 3 days, right? It's like bang, 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 we're playing again. Bang, 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 you're playing again. And so the amount of time to get things changed or to kind of tweak or put your stamp on it, for lack of a better term, those are the things, right? And I remember Tom Moore used to say this. He's the great offensive coordinator, Hall of Famer, all the way around. He was with the Steelers, with us at the Colts, and now with the Buccaneers. He's like, men, teams are built from March until August. And then what you are is what you are, and we're going to make the most we can of it. That is a true statement, much truer than I ever believed. But I had a great time, had some great relationships, not only with coaches that I still talk to and players that I still text with and talk with. Good people, man. We had an absolute blast. Wish we would have won more games. But again, no regrets from my end.
Okay, so what's your reaction to that? I mean, I think that was pretty honest. I mean, he didn't have a chance to really win games. The team was going nowhere. Bad team. You fired the coach. He's in on broadcasting. He was 1-7. I mean, maybe a coach that's there maybe wins another game or so. But I mean, there wasn't a lot of setup success there, right?
Yeah, certainly walked into a pretty ugly situation. I think the historic nature of the losses, though, were a bit jarring. But again, in my opinion, there's no reason why he should have been a serious head coaching candidate after the cycle, which, he has been was very upset by, people like me or people that, didn't consider him a legit candidate. But I think I think the Colts are much better off with Shane Steichen.
I think they're fine. Can I ask you guys this? We have like a minute here.
By the way, Adrian Peterson was the last running back to win MVP.
2012, Tomlinson, 2006, Sean Alexander, shout out to him in 2005, and then obviously Marshall Faulk in 2000. Now it's obviously a quarterback. Brock Purdy up there, please. Even though he's good, whatever. Why? PTI. This is the first time he's been on Get Up and ESPN has Saturday for the last couple weeks. Why are we tiptoeing around him leaving broadcasting and going to coach? I just don't understand that.
To me, it'd be the perfect little July segment to have insert your host here, Wendy Nix, I don't know, whoever, to sit down with him, and boom, in the middle of July, you spend a 10-minute NFL Live segment with Jeff Saturday, kind of a tell-all. I think it'd be interesting. I think it would be the perfect summer content. I don't know why.
But even like 2 minutes on Get Up, you have a 2-3 hour show. Jeff Saturday's back. Well, where did he go? Well, he left to go be the coach of the Colts.
The elephant.
I didn't understand it.
In the room. Just a reminder of how long it's been, by the way, since the Colts have last won a home game. It was before the Jeff Saturday era began. These were the Colts leaders the last time that they won a home game. You had Frank Reich as head coach, Matt Ryan as their passer, Deion Jackson, Philip Lindsay were their running backs.
Philip Lindsay.
Your guy,
yes.
Bobby Okereke, their leading tackler. Yeah. You got to go back again to mid-October of last season. Everybody have a great Wednesday. We will chat with you